Into a fan favorite. A lot of people have actually started to take stock of this guy, but SortOf, with his pedigree of taking down top-level players, you cannot underrate this guy. Let's get ready for game number 1 between these two lads.
Indeed, spawning in on the right side is going to be in Team My Insanity, a smaller Swiss esports organization. It is going to be Zerton playing as the Mongols in blue, and left side, it is SortOf. With the background of a StarCraft 2 career, he is going to be in command of the Mongols as well on the left.
Yeah, of course, SortOf built quite the reputation over in the StarCraft scene. People got really excited when they saw him coming over into the land of Age of Empires 4. Wasn't meant to be so far, but this would be the time to prove otherwise. With so much on the line. We have to remember, guys, we're qualifying 2 players for that land. That land in itself, each slot, even if you just turn up, get your ass whipped, and go home, I think you're going to probably be pocketing $15,000 to $20,000.
Indeed, it's actually a great point that you bring up with his StarCraft career, because he has had a stellar StarCraft career. Possibly one of the best among all the players that transitioned from StarCraft to AOE2. He once was a semi-finalist in DreamHack Valencia. Fun fact, he was eliminated by Marine Lord in that tournament.
So what you're saying is this is the long-term plan, right? This is the come about for vengeance. It just takes a while.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna have to work pretty hard to get there first. So he needs to get a ticket to Heidelberg first and then knock out Marine Lord to take revenge. I feel like he's a couple of steps away from that. So first things first, he needs to get through Zerton to have a chance to even qualify.
Exactly. I mean, you know, Zerton, he's got to be feeling pretty confident about the state. The thing I love, actually, is because he's represented by MYI, I can't really leak salaries one way or the other. I'd assume they give him enough to get by. And that's really important, actually. We talked a little bit behind the scenes about people like Recon, who maybe we haven't seen pop off the way we're expecting, because they're these part-time players, right? I think the reason you're seeing Zerton really up his game is now he's able to more easily commit to those hours without, A, maybe having to have another job, or if you somehow skim by, B, having the financial pressure of knowing you're on the clock before you have to go get a job.
It also helps with teammates and scrimming partners, because right now there's a perfect practice partner for Zerton and My Insanity. The only other player that is on the My Insanity AOE4 roster, that is the Mista. Obviously this depends on the availability and the time available for Mista, but given the fact that they are right now teammates, it's very much a possibility for Zerton to reach out to Mista for the sake of arranging some scrims and practices.
You're saying each time Mr. wakes up and he's like, do I feel like farming wheat today or farming Zerton? I'll have to think about this one. Another 5 minutes in bed first. But you know what? This isn't going to be a snooze, because I'm expecting some early kind of tempo to come out. We can already see the Spearman in production. This is kind of the standardized opening, right? Like, yes, the Mongols have evolved a little, but at the end of the day, it's always been about this buffer of spears on both sides to keep the other opponent at bay.
Now, Zerton has spotted this one, so he's fully aware that this aggression is coming his way. He's yet to drop a barracks himself, but he also spotted the villager moving forward, so he knows fully well what's coming his way, and given the fact that he's a defender, he should always have the numerical advantage when it comes to spears.
Yeah, and you notice that he has that delay in getting the racks down because he made this heavy investment into the pasture early on. There's a good reason for that. If you actually look at the layout of his base, like, he had to kind of keep it condensed. I don't think he actually got that many sheep in the end. It's kind of surprising. Neither player went for a second scout, but what you have to consider is actually right now, the only time you tend to see a Mongol with a second scout, or rather the first in this case because they start the Khan, is if they go for the stables build. There's no way in hell you're going for a stables build in a Mongol mirror because it's kind of obvious your opponent's just going to spam spears.
Yeah, obviously timings are very delicate here in Dark Age, so especially if you're gonna get Tower Rush with spears, you don't want to delay your economy build-up by essentially wasting town center time on making a new scout, especially because you can compensate for a lower amount of sheep with the pastures. So, for the sake of timing, both players have skipped the extra scout being added over here, and that should allow Zerton to match the spearman numbers of his opponent here without any major trouble.
Yeah, it's kind of that thing. It's like, yes, you know, for a start, with the Mongols, you're going to move your TC around, so there will already be a delay on your villager production if you went for the scouts. But it's also the fact that they added an extra 5 seconds in there. I think that's kind of an underrated change. But what I've noticed is players that still find ways to get a scout into their build, whether it's now or with the early military aggression, tend to win more. Like, I can't state this enough.
Ooh.
All right.
Ooh.
So what says screw vision there. What a move out of Zerton. Wow.
That's gonna be really painful, because you lose a key element of your combat capabilities there. You also lost your buff arrows, not just the con itself. So those spearmen, those are much more underwhelming than they could possibly have been.
Yeah, and now what I want you to think about is what I was going to get into. Apparently, SortOf was too busy listening for the next words. you lose your vision, you lose your ability to maintain control, you lose your ability to counter ahead of time. Like, obviously right now we're talking spear on spear, but let's say the tech up comes out on both sides, or there's a tower rush, whatever it may be, SortOf is now naked in terms of what you can see on the map. It also means that Zerton in this situation, with a Khan on Khan situation not available, he'll have the maneuver arrow you talked about, and that means that he can pinch SortOf if he doesn't have numerical advantage.
Yeah, not only does he have the numerical advantage back at home, the Khan is still alive, he's also faster to Fuel Age over here. You can see he already dropped the Deer Stones back at home, so he's gonna be a little faster to that transition to archers to deal with the spears. Quite a big advantage here at the beginning of this game for Zerton, you feel.
Especially when you look at the villager situation, right? It's not just the fact that he's got this tech up quicker, and it looks like he's, like, you know, he made the sidestep in the pasture, so he's got longevity compared to SortOf, who's a little bit delayed. It's the fact that he has also somehow kept a villager lead. There's about 1.5 because SortOf seemed to take too much time unpacking his TC. And unfortunately for SortOf, he also invested in too many spearmen here. He put an extra 2 in the queue. Zerton has no interest in this. The importance of this is now Zerton can rush up ahead of time into the feudal age and start getting the counter to these spearmen, which of course will be the archers.
It's the defender's advantage, right? You always have the numerical advantage because it takes so much time for SortOf to get through the map here, and you see it's a non-stop dance back and forth, and Zerton, he only needs to add just enough spearmen to hold this off, so it is SortOf who has to commit more resources to this push if he wants to get something out of this.
And the dangerous part that he's dancing with right now, as soon as that tech hop comes out, remember the Khan is respawning, but it's not here. So the difference is that Zerton can queue up the hardened spearman, time it correctly with a maneuver arrow, and then kill you off. That's why you see SortOf now not even dancing anymore. He just backs away. Because if he hangs around here, he's going to lose half these spearmen.
Exactly, and as you said, Hardened Spearman is coming in here, and SortOf is gonna get pushed all the way back into his base, and there is the Khan to cut off the escape path as well. And look at the arrows recharging just in time. This is gonna be a perfect lineup here for Zerton.
It's gonna be a rough situation. SortOf keeps backing up. He has to buy a little bit of time before he can engage. And the importance of this is right now, Zerton, he can just transition. He can go for the next thing. Wouldn't be surprised if he's starting to stockpile for the archery range and just starts transitioning at that point. And then it becomes a balance of, you know, who can force the other to overinvest, because at the end of the day, their goal here is likely going to be to rush castle. Yes, you're seeing spears, and, you know, yes, we can talk about how feudal is more important now than it was before. But at the end of the day, both of these civs don't have a way of walling themselves in. They have poor defenses. Lancers are a premium unit.
Yeah, Lancers, indeed premium units. Men-at-Arms as well could be a great response to Spears and Archers as well. And most importantly, the Step Redout as well to buff your eco. So, as you said, the goal is the Castle Age over here. And looks like the Khan is going to get away here.
No, he's not. He's not. The arrow's coming through, got him too low. He can't out-heal that now. That's just going to be a drive-by until you die. Nice maneuver there. SortOf. You saw what Zerton done, right? He actually pre-garrisoned. He garrisoned the outpost super early to make sure he had enough flurries of arrows. Now, some people would say that was not ideal, that was suboptimal, you're missing out on a lot of gathering rates, but this is showing you the importance of the Khan in these mirror matchups.
Absolutely, and so far, SortOf has been pretty careless with that Khan, losing it for the second time straight. Obviously, he did not expect the tower to be there, so part of that, of course, is that he simply ran into a tower he didn't know of, but still, once again, lacking those buff arrows could be a critical difference maker in these engagements.
Yeah, I feel like there should be some sort of training mechanism for teaching people to look after their Khan better. You know, like make them wear a shock collar, and every time the Khan goes down, they just get a little shock.
Oh, this could be a juicy one.
Oh, the archers scare him, though. The problem is he wouldn't be able to chase, remember, because the Yam will come online, and he knows he won't be able to gap close, so we'll just back away. Doesn't want to sacrifice a numerical advantage. Remember that Zerton didn't actually go for the archers in the end. Interesting choice here, especially after sniping the Khan, and I actually like it because of that. He's rushing Castle Age, and the reason he gets away with it is that aforementioned lack of vision. If you check SortOf's perspective, he has no clue what's going on right now.
And also no buff arrows, so he really can't force any engagements over here. Anytime Zerton wants to disengage, he can pop the movement arrow and just run away from this. He's buying tremendous time with this for himself, and as you said, he invested way less into Feudal Age. He did not go for Wheelbarrow, he did not go for Archers, so he can squeeze out a much faster Castle Age over here, and given that his opponent is so heavy on the Spears and Archers, Men-at-Arms might even be a more natural transition to him than Knights would be.
And SortOf should sniff this out. He should be suspicious on the fight that Zerton was trying to take there with just spears, because they should both be in archers, right? Or he should be in horsemen. The fact that he's in neither right now encourages him to go hunting for this. The problem is the timing is just going to be off. Zerton is going to complete this tech up because SortOf is going for a reluctant wide wrap. He's trying to shut down the gold, the issue with which is that Zerton already has enough gold for the first Lancers.
And he doesn't see it. Once again, the lack of vision is going to kick in. Those spears and the archers, they can't see the Step Redout. Right now, Zerton has,
Oh,
or
this
SortOf
hurts.
has no idea about this. He's also going up, but little does he know that his opponent is already like 80% up.
And the archery range feels kind of worthless. Like, you could potentially push crossbows, but it's clear what's going to dictate the flow of this castle age. It's not going to be static armies. It's going to be a hard push of lances. But for now, Zerton does need a reaction. Man-at-arms are going to be queued up, but they are not going to be quick enough out here. His spearmen are out of position because they actually went across map, so has to pull them back to react to this. It means the Uvu likely to be torched down at this rate before he can stop it.
At least it's still on fire, so there is some resources given to SortOf here. But once again, you do have the Yam network over here, and it looks like he's gonna buy sufficient time for that to survive. Men-at-Arms now making appearance on the battlefield, and this army could easily be wiped out here for SortOf.
Yeah, sort of. The micro's a little bit off there. He's clearly distracted, looking somewhere else at that very moment. Basically, he was getting ready to dive the TC. Nice line formation. Love the utilization of this. It's actually so underrated still to this day. It's weird how often we don't see it outside of mirror matchups, in fact. But it won't be enough to get him out without injury. You can see a few spearmen poking and prodding. This will chase all the way across the SortOf's base. He cannot turn around and fight it due to the man-at-arms.
And he loses momentum here because not only does he lose access to that army to attack his opponent, now it also means that Zerton is the aggressor who is already queuing up lancers. He has 2 on the battlefield, something that SortOf doesn't even have a vision on. He knows about the stable, but little does he know where those knights are at and where they are going to pop out of the South Forest or something to hit those gold miners, for instance.
Yeah, this is the potency of what Zerton done, right? You can see the clash coming out, which is definitely going to favor him. But let's think about how the tech up went. Tech up went along for Zerton. He was still gathering gold. SortOf rushed his tech up with all of his gold gatherers. The reason he's so far behind in Lancer production is that, sure, they teched up within, what, half a minute of each other? But the difference is that Zerton had hoarded enough gold to instantly start producing. SortOf hadn't.
And the thing is that that's because SortOf invested so much into those archers that have questionable combat value at best right now against those heavy units. They can pick off the spears, but that's it. And the thing is that now we're talking about premium units that Zerton has much more of than SortOf does.
And you see them now marching towards where the eco is. SortOf trying to guard for the moment. Limited spears to hold on, but looks like one Lancer is going to be picked. No respect given to the Yam here by Zerton, which means he's going to be turned into Yam meat himself. I just have to back off. I think he got a little bit ambitious here. I like the mid-map tempo, but I think he needs to be a bit more elegant about this entry, right? Don't try and brute force it. Respect the fact that SortOf is a capable micro-intensive player. He's proven that in StarCraft. You're not going to catch him out with a quick 1-2 punch down the center.
Yeah, he might have gone a little too greedy over there, though. He probably just wants to leverage map control and pick up the relics while he's being the aggressor, so we could possibly think about that as one of the reasons why he dove in. But that's a pretty good fight over here for him. Man-at-Arms catching the Spearman, and once again, Spearman will have to go all the way back home. Zerton is doing a great job controlling the map, and he's about to leverage that map control with relic control.
Yeah, I think something to consider here is like this whole idea of, oh, you know, I need to aggress to cover my monks. Well, you're up against Lancers, and if you look at the count, you can see right now SortOf took the lead. This is a very important detail, because right now, Zerton is using Lancers as part of his main army force. SortOf is reaching a kind of composite where he can split 1 or 2 off and go raiding. And the importance of that is that he will find and snipe out these Shaman. 150 a pop makes them not very cheap, even for a Civ that gets an extra 50% gold on drop-off via the step readout.
And as you're saying, that SortOf is flanking around with 2 knights, about to hit the gold mine. He just reached Zerton's base, and Zerton had no idea those are coming. Tremendous damage could be done on the gold miners here. First time that SortOf really takes the initiative in this game.
Yeah, that's the whoopsie daisy I was looking for. I mean, Zerton, the issue is he's kind of now responding, right? The reactionary phase is really dangerous for him. The difference also is the way that you've laid out your base. If you look, SortOf is always quickly able to pay attention to his gold and peel back, whereas Zerton's is more off the side, more easily kind of ignored. The importance of this cannot be stated enough, because what it's actually causing is a situation where you have limited vision to the flank attacks, while SortOf gets very early warnings because all the directions of approach he's covered, right? He's got an outpost out there, but on top of that, he's fighting in the midfield where you're coming from.
Yeah, but he lost his calm once again, so that vision is gonna be slightly limited. Look at that. Backing up upgrade coming in here for what I think is SortOf. What for?
I hope it's not for what I think it's for. Because you know how it works, Lytical. When you see a pack up, right? We can make some cheap joke about, yeah, he's just packing up and leaving for game 2 because Zerton's got this whoop whoop. No, it's not that simple. But SortOf could make it that simple if he's doing what I think he is. Because the last few times I've seen the pack up, it's because someone really likes the idea of a TC. Nice little conversion coming out there, by the way. Zerton getting a freebie on the man-at-arms. And SortOf caught not looking here. Feels kind of awkward the way he's getting caught off guard with these type of maneuvers, right? Like, I've criticized Zerton for kind of just being brute force about it, But at the same time, it does feel like SortOf is struggling to put out all the fires.
Yeah, you get the feel that whenever he's focusing on his eco, he loses track of his army for just a blink of an eye, and Zerton is exploiting that perfectly. Every single moment SortOf is not looking, he's going to lose 1 or 2 men-at-arms, and it's slowly trickling in because Zerton is taking over with the army numbers, partly because he's taking some very good skirmishes here down in the middle of the map.
And I'm really concerned about the state of their ecos right now, considering that SortOf is doing the bootleg army, right? They're both doing Lancers, sure, but you know, there's a lot more Lancers coming out from Zerton. Also, he went hard into the Shamans, where SortOf only kind of dipped his toe into it. Meanwhile, SortOf's been going for, you know, archers earlier, he went for the crossbows, like he's been going for a lot of cheap crap, but he should have mass on his side, or at least surplus eco to explain these numbers.
KP.
Instead, he's about
There
to
is the
take a
vision.
hit for the eco. Zerton's in. The Khan reigns supreme, gets the vision, and this stings twice. Not only because the village is going down, but check what research got taken by SortOf. He went for survival techniques. So this stings doubly over, getting denied on the deer.
Especially if you consider the fact that Zerton is on 2 DCs as well. Amazing raid for him. And that's the Khan's value in there. Not only are you getting the buff arrows, but the vision is so valuable. Also for Zerton, spotting the fact, or at least just assuming that his opponent might move out for the deer there, probing it and being valued with juicy villager pickoffs. Great move there by Zerton. Secures himself a pretty massive lead now, up by 12 villagers.
And it's not even an obvious read. If you check SortOf's base, he went multiple pastures. So, like, logically, he could stay in his base. Zerton just has the spidey senses, man. Like a lot of people would see those pastures in their opponent's base and go, there's no way he goes boar, there's no way he goes deer. He would never come out because we're Lancer on Lancer engagement. But what Zerton does so well here is leverages his Lancer advantage. Yes, SortOf closed up the number, but bad fights led to an escalation again for Zerton. And it's why he can afford to go for these premium raids, even pulling practically the entire Lancer army to do so.
Yeah, it's essentially being active with your knights and being rewarded for it, maintaining the aggressor stance, and you see behind this one, I wonder if SortOf even noticed this, looks like he's just now moving down to the south, almost getting his Uvu set on fire. I wonder if Zerton's gonna commit to this. He kinda has to do that. Oh, he's coming in with the Lancers from the north though.
He's going for the deer again. He wants to get that deer. He's wondering if SortOf doubled down and sent more workers out there.
And he
he'd
did.
be right to suspect that because that's exactly what's happened out of SortOf. Looks like he is hesitant though, because if he commits fully in with all the Lancers, he could get cut off. So we'll just send in 2. He'll try to shut down some eco, but difficult to do. In a Mongol mirror, if you're not willing to commit many Lancers, one outpost can hold you back due to those pesky Springolds.
Yeah, but once again, he's flanking around with 2 Lancers over here, flirting with the opportunity to hit the Lumberjacks this time around. He pulled away some of the forces of SortOf to the east, so he's gonna have a chance to hit him from the west. He's just waiting for a crossbow's position to do that.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Zerton's fishing for someone he won't find at the stage, right? Like, he's playing into uncharted territory, so the benefit is he's also drawing a lot of attention, but he's also getting new info, just in case there's something happening back here. But it's just a throwaway Lancer or 2. The idea is he's covering a transition, because if you look behind this, Zerton is now making a switch hard and fast into crossbows, already up to 13, and quickly increasing.
Behind this one though, SortOf is getting some weird text, whistling arrows for the Khan, before that additional torches. Looks like he just wants to max out that Ovu, but it remains to be seen what exactly these are for, because you get the feel that priorities are a little different for the 2 players over here, possibly in the favor of Zerton.
I actually really like the idea of whistling arrows. I feel like we don't see it that frequently, but this is incredible. For those going, huh, what's whistling arrow, what does it do? This gives you a plus 5 seconds duration to your arrow, as well as an extra 2 tile range. It's pretty big, and it makes sense when you look at Zerton's comp. Like, it's going full crossbows and nothing else. In fact, he's even now going in for the Siege Engineering Improved with the intent to begin a slow siege crawl and force SortOf into a staged battle.
Ooh, nice little pick off with the Lancers out there. Stops the tower for the time being, possibly even getting the bounty for it and then disengaging. Nice little micro war there for SortOf, but as you said, right now, we have the dangerous tower crawl coming up for Zerton, already setting up the siege on the front. And behind this, he's still sitting on 2 DCs, which is something that SortOf might not even know.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm wondering, does he even have a clue about this? Because the way that SortOf's used his Khan so far is more or less as a ram, right? He just headbutts stuff and dies. Like, he hasn't really been doing much scouting with him. This might be the first time he gets eyeballs on Zerton's base with this wrap with the Lancers. My concern is if you don't do heavy damage and draw Zerton back, he's going into your base.
But he's going to match that with Lancer numbers out there. Might actually catch a couple of villagers here on the wood line, but he's going to have to respect the force that he's pushing his base. Getting his Lancer intercepted here, actually.
That is remarkably well done there. Do you see what Zerton done? He played close to the tree line, so even though SortOf should have the number advantage, it doesn't look that way at all. Because half of them aren't clashing swords right now. Sure, at the end of it, SortOf might have 1 or 2 Lancers max left, but damage already done. In fact, Micro's so on point that I feel like Zerton got more out of this than he ever had any right doing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And he's the aggressor still. He knows fully well that trading Lancers here is favorable for him, because if the Lancers are gone, it's gonna be difficult for SortOf to snipe the siege that he has already added. He's got Mangonels and his opponent doesn't. So with the Lancers gone, suddenly that Mangonel is a much larger threat than it possibly could have been a minute ago.
And the issue for SortOf right now is the eco isn't balanced in a way that he can go for siege. He hasn't even got siege engineering improved yet. He has to save up the stone to go towards that. Zerton really has caught him with his trousers down, and now he is looking to spank. And he can do that off the power of his strong eco. Not only has he now discounted his cost in terms of his front line by going crossbows, which leads to more to invest in the siege, he already was so far ahead. Just look at the eco. 57 to 76.
Ooh, diving by the Knights over here, trying to snipe the Mangonel, but the price to pay is so high.
Oh my god, the attack speed arrow is going to do so much work here. The lance are being cleaned up. Sure, there's a diving coming up the crossbows, but if you have no melee left, there's nothing you can do. Not to mention the Mangonel that is still not addressed here. It takes so long to get through that despite the fact that it seems like you got to a good start of this fight, it doesn't matter. That tower's still standing, and also the difference in terms of eco is now going to come into effect. Sure, you could say this was mostly an even exchange of armies, but the difference is afterwards, Zerton is going to rebuild at double the speed.
Exactly, even is not enough here for SortOf. He's down by almost 30 villagers now, and also down 2 relics as compared to his opponent. As you said, this is a fight that Zerton is more than happy about, with the support of the tower, that Mangonel surviving for so long, the expensive Lancers being taken down from SortOf. That fight was much more favorable for Zerton if you look at the big picture.
And the big picture is this. Look at the research choice coming out from Zerton as well. He's going in for textiles. Why would you want textiles at 21 minutes in, 80 pop cap with 2 TCs? Because Zerton is sick of going to defend his own base. He's strong-arming now, because the issue when you go to the siege comp is if you ever have to go back to defend, you're going to leave them behind. They're probably going to get torched down. By getting textiles, he ensures any raid-in by SortOf will have negligible outcome. And instead, he doesn't have to go back to deal with it. Instead, he can double down on blitzing through SortOf's base.
And now he's assuming that there is going to be a siege added on the other side as well. Spotted the first Fracture and Trebuchet being added. He's going to respond with 4 Springolds in here. We know how these battles go. You have the Springgold advantage. You probably win the fight. And he might actually be rewarded here with an easy pick.
Yeah. Oh. Not quite. Needed one more strike. But you see the awkwardness using traction trebs in the Mongol engagements like this. You talked about the Springolds, they're 10 tower range. These trebs that the Mongols have specifically are only 13 tower range. Most counterweight trebs, they come in at 16 tower range. Very difficult to snipe. But when you're up against the Mongol opponent, if they look away for a second, you're going to get a freebie.
And the thing is that because they can build a siege on the battlefield, it takes so little time to build up 6 Springolds. A single volley is enough to wipe out half of your siege. So it's not just the fact that the range is lower, so the margin of error is much smaller that you can afford. It's also the fact that your opponent can punish you so well because they're just so well set up to snipe siege.
Political, they nerfed the build time. It takes double what it used to. Well, that just tells you how incredibly busted it used to be. It's still a ridiculously strong tool, which is what you're seeing here. I mean, it's brilliant. You're saving 300 resources in terms of building the siege workshops. You're getting a better build speed, and you're doing it on the front line. And on the front line, he looks to now push in 41 crossbow in the field for Zerton. And you can see the SortOf is heavily discounted here, mainly just spearmen. And this is dangerous. He backs up where his TC is located. This is where you can easily lose the game, because this is where all your food gathering is going on. In fact, SortOf is over-leveraged at this stage. He isn't even gathering in a safe spot. The moment these sheep spawn, he's clubbing them to death in front of the pastures.
And this is the moment where Zerton can just start trapping down those pastures and just wreck the entire food eco of SortOf. This is once again the escalation. That's the problem for SortOf. Even if he holds this off, how is he going to play the game in the next 5 minutes or so? So much map control for Zerton, massive eco advantage, and the chance to even damage the critical food eco of SortOf right now.
And I'm just trying to wonder why the sheep would keep breeding if they're watching their loved ones get clubbed in front of the pasture. I mean, that must be some long-term vengeance plan coming up from the sheep. But with the homes crumbling and surely crushing the poor baby sheeps below it, it seems unlikely they will get their time. It seems unlikely SortOf's going to get much time to react to this. You can see he's now stockpiling horsemen. This is a do-or-die moment. You win or lose based on this. And one thing that scares me is that whistling arrows tech that was taken by Zerton. The extra 5 seconds with the attack speed buffer on this many crossbowmen will laugh in the face of the horsemen.
Indeed. And the thing is that you also have a lot of backup towers behind this one. 50 crossbows against 20 horsemen. The problem is the numbers. It's not the direct counters. Horsemen are supposed to counter crossbows, but it's more like a soft counter rather than a hard counter. And you're simply being outnumbered very heavily with the power of the Yam on the side of Zerton, with the power of the Springald arrows on his side. And honestly, SortOf doesn't even know whether Zerton has any spearmen out here, but looks like he's out here for blood. It's a now or never. It's a do or die moment for SortOf.
And the backup comes out. Zerton has got some horsemen coming in. They'll function as a front line to keep the horsemen at bay. But for now, he stands his ground. Staggered formation as he backs up into the choke point. Outposts are doing some serious damages so far. Something that SortOf needs to respect. In fact, he's hesitant. He's too slow. The spearmen are not engaging quick enough. And it means the horsemen are quickly being sacrificed. The spread out line holds for the moment as Zerton continues his retreat. And look at the double down. So many horsemen now being queued up. This is do or die for SortOf. He not only needs to take the fight, he needs to take the towers and take control of the map. But with his numbers quickly diminishing, I struggle to see a way. The horsemen are already gone, the spearmen will not be long behind them, and yet Zerton has only lost about 20 of the original 50 crossbows.
Too much casualties on the side of SortOf. The Mangonel stayed alive so long for Zerton, dished out so much punishment on the spears, and all that remains from the army of SortOf is just a pile of dead bodies. Once again, he pushed out, but what's the price he's paying? For the sake of destroying 2 towers, he had to sacrifice almost everything he has had. And off the back of this, as you said, Zerton still has a standing army, and now he's also making a switch to horsemen, something that SortOf doesn't have a response to.
He built a ram, Lidicor. We're 26 minutes in. That's the desperation on full display. Not ram, more Yam, because Yam is winning this game for certain. His maneuverability on the front line is remarkable here, and now he's turning the screws. He's trying to force fights before the horseman retinue is rebuilt for SortOf, and you can see the horseman numbers right now look grim for him, fantastico for Zerton. Still 37 crossbows, but so many horsemen, and off the back of that military academy now being researched, Zerton is about to surge towards victory here. SortOf is at a loss. He cannot match the production, he cannot match the demand on his economy, and he cannot even defend his own base as it stands.
69 army against 39 only, and SortOf is yet to see the horseman switch from Zerton. I love the patience that Zerton is using over here. He doesn't want to show the horsemen before they are ready. He's gonna be up to 30, and he's going to be looking to force one decisive engagement, one to close out the game and push him into what is going to be a 1-0 lead in all certainty.
Yeah, this is what we call the just GG trebuchet spam. Like, he just wants 5 or 6 of them hitting the TC and SortOf. I mean, you're not hitting the CC with this. Your only play with these horsemen is a wraparound. The problem is there's so many outposts in the center. I don't know what you're meant to do with this. Even if you go after the economy right now, Zerton just goes in for the kill. He'll end the game.
Yep.
And that's the problem you face right now. This type of raid is way too late to be effective.
Indeed, it might be a distraction for Zerton, but he also has textiles, he might have defensive towers back at home, and killing 20 villagers here is insufficient, because you're going to lose 50 yourself in the next 1 minute, because Zerton is going in with the trebs. It looks like he's just gonna send back the horsemen. He's even playing this one a little too cautiously, but love the way that he's not going to sacrifice anything. He just wants to play this one safe. He knows he's in the driver's seat and doesn't want to risk anything here.
Yeah, this is the next step transition. I talked about textiles, the means of not having to come back, but now he has horsemen. Horsemen that are yammed up. It means that he can react to SortOf and actually potentially snipe a whole army. That's why he makes this gambit. Worst case scenario, you just mirror the movement and you keep a huge chunk of SortOf's forces out of the equation. In fact, the important chunk that he needs to clean up all this siege. Siege that is still breaching your base.
And towers that are still creeping up on your base, so the Yam network expands. The towers with the Springald upgrades will also expand, and look at that. Once again, the horsemen will catch all the horsemen coming in from SortOf. You also have the con out there for the movement speed, and SortOf can't do anything with that wraparound.
I love that little detail out of SortOf, actually. He microed one horseman off to peel back half of the horseman, but it's just... It's a cute play, and it's actually the difference in kind of a very tight game, but right now this isn't tight. In fact, the only way this is tight is this kind of a squeaky bum time moment for SortOf right now. He needs to do some full sweat fiesta if he wants to turn this around, and I'm just not seeing it anymore. Horsemen being cleaned up. Zerton has at least bootlegged it a little, right? It's only 3 trebuchets on the front line, and the Springald count is now with SortOf, but my concern is in the horseman count. Look at the difference now. Zerton is bearing his arms on horseback. He's kind of done with the siege, and the ability to just run through the base and end this game is approaching quickly for the blue Mongols.
Even more concerning for SortOf is the fact that Zerton, he's 200 population, so he's banking up resources for Imperial Age. So in about 2 minutes time, Zerton is going to take over with the technology lead as well. That is the window that sort of still has to somehow pull the miracle out of this one, but he really needs a miracle here. A magical raid that wipes out half of Zerton's army, or a terrible fight for Zerton, because Zerton is now going into Imperial and simultaneously diving into the base of SortOf.
Yeah, he really needs Zerton to have one of those kind of weird moments where, like, Microsoft Windows does something funny and your delete key doesn't work, but I don't like, or your delete key locks in rather, but I just don't see that happening.
You gotta be really careful with the repairs, by the way, because SortOf started to pull villagers to repair the injured town center as it was moving. The thing is that there's a bug right now. Because it's much more difficult to repair siege now, that also applies to moving Mongol buildings. And the cost you pay for repairs depends on the time it takes to repair. So you consume thousands of resources repairing a moving town center. You have to unpack it before repairing. Just a small thing here for SortOf could have been a disaster because he would have wasted thousands of resources on those repairs.
It could be a disaster the other way if Zerton's not fast about this. Like, we have to remember this was a late second TC by SortOf. I think Zerton let off the brakes, the pedal rather, when he could have actually just plowed through. And now he's given an opportunity for SortOf to recover. Good amount of sprinklers coming out. A healthy comp. You can see the variance here. He's got all 3 types of units he's required to hold. Whereas Zerton's kind of still a 1-2 punch man. So what Zerton needs is a quick tech up. You can see the elite status coming through. As soon as that completes, he needs to be in. Because if this drags on any longer, I think SortOf actually has ways of recovering this game.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. SortOf, he has to make a timing push happen. He needs to take the fight before the upgrades come in for Zerton. While at the same time for Zerton, he needs to go in once the upgrades are in, and it looks like he's almost finished with those. Flanking around is SortOf with the forces once again. He wants to take the fight elsewhere. He just wants to buy himself time to get up to Imperial, and now that he's 200 pop, oh, there it is.
There it is, the horseman, they get in. That was a beautiful maneuver. He used the small stealth forest to get in. Limited villages being sniped here, but a lot of idle eco can be forced. The thing that Zerton needs to be careful of is making sure he has a second line coming out as soon as this one goes down, and they will be strong when they do. You can see Biology also now prepped. SortOf needs this fight. He needs a good one, and he needs it now.
Yeah, but the upgrades are coming in now for Zerton. Timing is perfect on this.
I mean, that's going to be brutal. The Spearman should still clean up, but it's still going to be a good trade for Zerton. And behind this, like, we've got to remember, it gets worse in the coming minutes. Biology has to be about a minute away now. At that stage, SortOf has no way of combating this. He needs to go, and he needs to go now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He tried to go, but the thing is that Zerton just forced his hand, forced him back into his base with those raids coming in. And the Spearmen, they no longer have the mobility advantage over here, KP. 25 horsemen for SortOf, 30 for Zerton. Zerton can always mirror the movement of SortOf and just match any kind of incoming raid that SortOf plans against his base.
Exactly. The pokey sticks are strong for Zerton. I mean, the biology is got to be almost be done by now. A change in win conditions. Zerton says you have to come out. I know what you want to do. I'm going to take the sacred sites because otherwise you're going to park yourself back and look for Imperial Age. We can see SortOf now is beginning that tech up. Timing could kill him, though, if he loses the main army. That's the key detail. He needs to dodge death so that he can get into these tech ups once he arrives in Imperial.
And the moment he arrives in Imperial, Zerton has to push, because he knows fully well that his opponent just spent tons of resources on aging up. That is the moment to strike before the imp upgrades come in for SortOf. If SortOf is able to get his Imperial Age upgrades in, it's a completely different story. There's a chance for recovery in that case.
Is it me or does it feel like Zerton's doing the completionist challenge, right? Like, I must kill every unit to win? Because he's getting very obsessed with these groups of horsemen, and it's bad because he's mainly running crossbows. And what's happened is he pivoted north, and the entire front line that he built up earlier on this game is just gone. SortOf is broken out, and this is the worst time that Zerton could give map control, because now the gold is drying up. SortOf needs to come out. He needs to access those neutral gold veins, and he's going to get to do so for free. In fact, he's even going to now make you pay a price, because the amount of crawling siege he's got is still unanswered, rather, by Zerton.
And Zerton lost all the towers he has had, so he no longer has the support of those. He's fighting spearmen now, large amounts of spearmen with the horsemen, but he changes the angle of attack, and he's now targeting production buildings, key production buildings that SortOf might not be able to replenish fast.
And Zerton, he has transitioned to hand cannoneers as a very premium unit. Key detail to keep an eye on is where his gold's coming from, because if SortOf identifies that and raids in with horsemen, he can shut this down very quick. But right now, these horsemen are obsessed with trebuchets. That should not be their chief concern. There are bigger concerns on this plane right now.
Oh, speaking of which, Springald numbers on the other side, sniping most of those trebuchets. Ooh.
Where's the army right now? There's just nothing defending here, SortOf.
He's pushing into the enemy base. Look at to the south.
He went too deep. Oh my goodness. And he lost the army.
Is it greed?
Well.
It has to be greed. He's just running spearmen into the hand cannoneers and losing all the Springalds off the back of this. terrific fight here for Zerton, and a complete disaster for SortOf. Sacrificed everything he had, down to 44 army.
This isn't gluttony, this is overconfidence. SortOf, he's been winning these fights, right? Honestly, in my opinion, the last 5 minutes, he's winning all these fights. Zerton isn't making a killing the game move, right? He's not finishing the game in any way. SortOf is recovering, and I think he gets ahead of himself, he gets a little bit too confident. He forgets where his economy is at and thinks he can throw away an army and insta-replace. That was the issue. He didn't have a second line of production to defend that siege, and instead of having 2 Mangonels, 8 Springles, whatever else he had as well, he's now down to just 3 Springles and a Trebuchet to his name. Meanwhile, Zerton, he invested all of that gold in a better choice here because the hand cannoneers are shredding SortOf and guaranteed they're going to continue to do so because remember, he got Whistling Arrow earlier on. That attack speed buff is going to affect the hand cannoneers.
Oh man, hand cannoneers with Whistling Arrows and attack speed plus the Yam movement. You get the feel that that's a pretty premium unit that we're talking about there, and something that's gonna be put into use here in a matter of seconds because Zerton looks like he has had enough of this. Now he's coming in, feels that there is no army out here for SortOf to hold his base with.
And he's right. There's not really much that SortOf can hold with at the moment, and so much economy is exposed on the front side. Everything condensed together. The production buildings continue to fall. A pushing comes out from Zerton, ready to insta-replace with a new wave of horsemen. For the time being, going to hold his ground. Arrow choice is going to be the armor one. The wraparound coming the backside. SortOf with the ambush around the backside here. And it's spread out the hand cannoneers means he might not be able to clean up quick enough, but SortOf looks way too weak. The Russian cavalry looked strong, but their damage output most definitely was not as they get wiped by the gunpowder.
There is no food here, KP. The villager is getting caught in the crossfire, and SortOf knows the end is near. He's going to tap out. No more chances to replenish his army. The food was just gone, and Zerton, after some shaky moments, closes out game number 1 over here. Confident mid-game to take control over this game. You can see the villager graph. Massive advantage mid-game, but almost gave a chance for SortOf to come back into this one. Manages to close out the game in the end, but he has to be careful because SortOf has seen and showed quite a lot of recovery potential here.
Yeah, this screamed Anakin. Like I just imagine both of them saying you underestimate my power at different phases in this game, right? Like you had Zerton who got kind of overconfidence with the cruise mode, which offered up the opportunity for SortOf to come back in. Then SortOf miscalibrated his economy, thought he was able to just keep unlimited troops pushing in, got ambushed by the hand cannoneers. A really cool back and forth game. Kind of interesting the way this played out, considering at the start, like if we were 20 minutes in, a lot of pro players would have just said, yeah, Zerton's won this, it's done. He said, you know, Zerton is already happy being compared to Lenok. Definitely a respectable player to kind of be mirrored to. You talked about that French Abbasid matchup and how there are ways that the French can exploit it, but it does require the Abbasid players a little bit sleepy, maybe not paying full attention. And one thing I want to bring up again after we saw it in game 1 is SortOf's micro was a little bit lacking. Maybe he needs to warm up. Maybe that's the issue here. But if he is a little bit off point, although the Abbasids do have an inherent advantage as the game goes on against the French, micro still matters a lot. The French are still seen as a pesky sieve for people at all ranks across the ladders because of their ability with good micro to take a clear and dominant lead by 15 minutes.
Exactly, it's the combination of a passive and an aggressive lead that they can take by eco. They can play this passively with 2 TCs, while also simultaneously being the aggressors, being the one possibly even dictating the tempo of the game with the Lancers, and picking off villagers every once in a while secures you a small eco lead, and you can double down on that by going for second town centers. As you said, it's the combination of that ability to build up a lead in terms of economy, both passively and actively as an aggressor.
Yeah, and I want to see a balance in terms of the knight count. I don't want to see Zerton just go full ham, well, full horse in this situation, and build too many, because I think that's a little bit of a bait, right? There's a kind of point at which you get diminishing returns, because I think a big mistake that a lot of French players make, and it's why we're seeing the win percentage suck right now, literally, trust me, I've watched top 100 players do this build, and you'll see why it's bad, is they just spam knights as a frontline unit, as their main army, and they're up against spear building civs like the HRE and Abbasids. And you're just stuck in a rut, right? It feels like people haven't figured out how to evolve the French, but I actually think the way forward for them, especially against this opponent in a prolonged feudal, is to go for all 3 unit types: spears, archers, and then you can have some knights. But your goal here isn't to try and get the main fight going, it's just to have enough to defend while your knights still do what they do best, which is chipping away at the eco situation on the other side of the map.
Exactly, the magical word is spearman, something that many French players still don't use. The most common composition that you see from French players, it is the archer plus the knight composition, and that is now clearly overrun by spearman horseman. But once you start mixing in your own spearman, you also force a deviation from this standard spear horse combination from the Abbasids. And if it is really a 1-1-1 composition, so you get a range, a barracks, and a stable as well, producing the most ideal unit all the time, then suddenly, once again, as you said, the French can take over because they can hold back enough units to defend against the Abbasid aggression and then have sufficient army to hold while detaching the knights and going in for the raids.
Exactly, and that's the key word there, defend. Like, your goal here isn't to overwhelm the enemy army. Because if you're going to try and spam spears and archers against the Abbasids to win a fight, like, you're going to lose, right? Like, they're spearmen, they have phalanx, they're just better. There's more food available to the Abbasids because of the fresh foodstuffs, so they can actually get better surplus, not to mention their gathering rates on berries. It's very hard to contend. But your goal isn't to contest them directly. Like, you are a raiding civ. Be a raiding civ. And the cool thing with these type of builds is it allows you to then kind of go for your secondary TC, and you get this ability to chip away at the Abbasids enough that you can keep the eco lead, especially when you consider that most Abbasid players in that situation might go up to 3 TCs, which sounds good at first, but up against a civ like the French means you're spreading your economy out wide, meaning there's more opportunities to raid.
Speaking of spreading out the eco wide, one of the key benchmarks here for Zerton is going to be how much he can limit SortOf's expansion. We have seen how critical it is in this matchup that the French player rushes the feudal age like Zerton is doing, even skipping the second scout, and tries to get that first knight as soon as possible to possibly limit the placement of that town center from SortOf, or in a more ideal scenario even, possibly deny him from stone before he can gather enough for the second TC.
The problem with doing this play is you have to do it completely unnoticed. You're noticing that the info already came in, SortOf's already building the rack, so it might be difficult to get the value out of the quicker night timing. I'm really just a bigger fan of making sure that you have got your hands on your wheelbarrow as you complete the tech up. I think that's actually a much better build, and as you can see, Zerton has gone for that. He hasn't even started getting wheelbarrow yet.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up. Indeed, you get the feel that Zerton is willing to sacrifice some of his early game eco here for the sake of really having a chance to deny that TC from SortOf. As you said, the spearmen are out there, but once again, it's a balancing act. All you want to do with this first knight is delay the villagers on the stone until you have the first archer coming in. You might not be able to deny the Abbasid player completely from going for that second TC, but even just delaying it by 1 or 2 minutes by being annoying with these lancers is something that already is going to pay dividends.
Yeah, and the build I'm talking about where you get the wheelbarrow in the prep towards feudal age maybe delays you 10, 15, maximum 20 seconds. So what I'm looking at right now is like I've just kind of got my stopwatch out like a coach, and I'm just like timing the 20 seconds to see if Zerton does anything. And he has pushed back away from the stone, the workers there. He is wrapping around, but you still want to chip a villager or two. There's some decent idle time, but realistically, I think the damage to SortOf is minimal. You can see the spearman is now in position, and all of a sudden, you don't really want to start diving with this knight anymore.
I beg to differ. He forced away the villagers from the berries, the mining camp is yet to be completed, second TC nowhere close to being a reality, and you see Zerton already has archers coming out here. He's got a step advantage over here, and he's going to start chipping away at villagers in a matter of seconds. Gets 2 hits, no blacksmith for him just yet to finish off the villager with though, but the villager stays around, opportunity for him to possibly finish him off.
Yeah, and that's my issue. That's why I didn't like it. Is like Zerton, he feels this time pressure to go in like that. And notice he didn't even take out the spearman. So a lot of the time, a French player will take out the spearman on his own as long as he doesn't see a brace coming out, just because it's a freebie, right? You win in a one-on-one. So I kind of expect him to smash into the villager and then turn to the spear. Now he can't dive in. Like, there's 2 spears here. He needs to get his archers in position. That's going to take time. They take a hell long time to walk across the map. SortOf, one thing I'm looking towards for him, though, is to react, because he should know this is coming. If you check near Zerton's base, you can see there's a scout giving all this info over. So SortOf should already have the counter prepped, which would, of course, be the horseman.
I don't think he has any prep just yet. He's going heavy on the spearman. In fact, he was very delayed adding the spearman. He didn't see it.
Okay, this explains
Wrong
everything.
angle.
Like, I'm perplexed right now what SortOf was looking for from that angle. I think he was expecting a TC expansion onto the deer, but you can still scout that while being further north. Like, I'm very surprised by this. And now, instead of getting the direct counter for the horsemen up against the archers, is instead going towards the spears plus the archers. And while this can feel good with the amount of surplus food you're getting, right, like you should be able to afford an extra production build compared to horsemen. He's not gathering food right now. He's just locked in, and the only thing he gets is wood. That's why he's going archer range.
Beautiful block with the scout out there, allowing the knights to come through. And you see, SortOf is desperate. He's got the stone for a second TC, but he's struggling to place it because these knights are just so annoying. And as you said, he's going archers himself, but he already is at a disadvantage with numbers. 6 archers already out for Zerton, ready to push those spearmen. He's just stunned right now. He can't expand, and you see where Zerton is going. He's going for a hunt. The most ideal place possibly for the Abbasid player to place his second TC at.
Man, at first I was criticizing Zerton's opening, but I actually really like it now. And I'll explain why. Like, SortOf, didn't get his food anymore. It's not just the... You mentioned the stone, but I think the food is more important. Like, he's not on those berries at all.
Yep.
He's baited himself into going for wood units. Like, he's just looking to spam archers now. And the reason why he thinks it's a good idea is because he wants that TC, right? He needs a lot of wood. It's the only thing he can get right now. My concern is if this is your plan to just spam archers and spears, how are you going to win before that first tree line's gone? And what happens when that first tree line is gone? Because the next one is in no man's land. And Zerton's army is clearly bigger than yours right now.
And look at the results here from Zerton. He's diving in with the knights. He's already denying half of that wood line. But what's more important is that the second TC is also at a bad position. We're going to talk about that in the future, though, because the archers are diving deep, and Zerton is out here for blood.
Yeah, the issue right now is SortOf has gone for a comp that's going to require a lot of wood. And instead of using this TC to secure an extra wood line, he's used it to secure a retreat point from this map. Like, it doesn't really do much more than that. Like, you can argue he's protecting the berries now, sure, and he needed to, but this is a reactionary play. This is not him playing for a one-up. This is him playing from behind and right now staying behind.
And he's confined into his base. That's the biggest problem. And if you take a look at the north of that wood line, that is the ideal place for a second TC. It's right next to the hunt, right next to the wood line. Would have secured some extra food for himself, something that the Abbasids desperately need moving forward. And also would have secured the back of that wood line. Now, it doesn't have that safety for his forest, but what's more important is that he's going to be very strained on food inside his base. He's depleting those berries rather rapidly, and he has no backup food available.
I'm worried for SortOf right now. Like, I don't think this berry patch is enough to get you by. I also am concerned at the lack of production increase, right? We're just talking a spear, an archer source, right? One apiece. Like, he hasn't escalated. I wouldn't be surprised if Zerton's on 2 archery ranges right now, prepping escalation. And in fact, he'll have the support for that escalation because if you look, you can see he's going survival techniques and playing deer. In the meantime, Raiden's continue to keep SortOf on the defensive and risk his economy while Zerton's is free to do whatever the hell it chooses.
And you see Zerton is diving deeper and deeper, potentially putting SortOf into an even larger problematic position, so to say. The archer range is going to be exposed. At some point, Zerton can just camp right next to the range and pick off any new unit that is being built. And that's one of the 2 production buildings that SortOf has available.
Yeah, so what I'm expecting Zerton to do is in the next minute or 2, go for blacksmiths and get his hands on the upgrade range damage, right? If you look at his count, he's almost at 20 now. It makes sense. Then, naturally, you have the means to sidestep into siege engineering. Once siege engineering is online, you can force SortOf to take a bad fight. I think you need to do that soon, though, because he's going to continue to escalate this archer ball, the spear ball, and he might be able to get enough economy together. For the time being, fights are being forced, and they're bad fights for SortOf to take, but he has to get this outpost up to give a buffer point, because Zerton keeps showing up on this north side.
Yeah, he had to have that outpost. He had to sacrifice a couple of archers and spearmen to do so. For now, Zerton is repelled, but he still is going to have an angle to attack from the south to hit those lumberjacks. And what I would love to... What happened there? Is it the TC?
Okay, he done it. he thought he clicked a tree, and he hadn't, so he just idled. Luckily, he noticed it quickly. Let's not judge, folks. I'm sure there's plenty of us that would have not noticed for half a minute that we'd done that.
There's the blacksmith that you talked about, and you see Zerton has no desire to go second TC. He wants to go for this very OG, old-school, full aggro feudal age from the French. I think he would massively benefit from a tower follow-up to this. A tower behind the back of that wood line would be absolutely horrendous for SortOf to deal with at this point.
You say that, but remember, you're building towers against the Abbasids, like, and they still have wood for the moment. I don't think it's, like, the worst idea, but I think the better idea is just to go into the ranged upgrade and build a ram. And just go. Like, sure, it's more pricey than Outpost, but what it does is it forces SortOf to take a fight with his spears. And his spears will be burnt. And the moment they're burnt, the knights get to do whatever the hell they choose. You can see he's doing this in small quantities right now, but a ram forces the matter in a way that SortOf cannot react beneficially.
That's true, although I don't feel like SortOf really has the potential to take down better or towers. Even if he has a battering ram, he doesn't really have the army to protect it with. So I still believe that a tower here for Zerton could be more than devastating for SortOf. For now, looks like it is just going to be ranged attack upgrade, no siege engineering coming in. He's just flirting with the idea of diving in and keeps picking away villagers.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised by that idea, right? Like, I think the archer count is big enough. Now the villagers are in trouble as well. This is getting worrying right now. SortOf should be escalating the eco count right now, but he's not. And also, the idle time that's being forced is putting him miles behind. Think about this. You can say SortOf has a 4-village lead right now, but how much of his economy has been idle in the last 10 minutes, right, at different phases. Meanwhile, Zerton, he hasn't had a single idle villager. He's going to see it. He's going to wrap. No way.
Oh, he's going to miss out on this.
I would be very surprised. Like right now, you can see that SortOf is running out of wood.
Yeah.
He's running out of food as well, by the way. Look at SortOf's food. He's in trouble. He's only getting 89 food a minute. He can't keep producing villages and units.
That's when the berry gathering bonus backfires. You deplete it so fast that you need extra source of food. That's why the Abbasids are moving so frequently towards the hunt, but he wasn't able to, so he's now strained on food. And what's more important is that now Zerton has a visual confirmation on him being strained on wood, and now he can dive in with the knights from the north and also harass the wood line to the south. SortOf has a slow-moving army. He is going to struggle to react to this two-pronged attack.
Yeah, that's the point, right? It's like you're reaching a stage now where the Knights can do what we talked about up against the Abbasids. They become raiding units. They don't just function as a front line. Sure, Zerton's going to still use some of them in that way because he wants to threaten the enemy archers. But realistically, he wants to start peeling off 2 free Knights here and there and going into the eco while still fielding an army that can take the main fight, which when you look at the archer count, he clearly can. It's 31 to 23. It continues to escalate. This is why I want to see the Ram play. I actually think Zerton's production rate is superior to a point where he can defend the Ram and sort of has to throw away half the army to get rid of it.
Speaking of throwing away the army, you see, Zerton is not doing that. He is diving in with the Knights and starting to do really what the French do best. Peeling off the Knights, diving in, picking off a couple of villagers, and then disengaging. Looks like he's now out here for a bigger fight, flirting with the idea to dive onto those archers and spears.
He wants to bait SortOf into range for the trades again. That's what he's looking for. But the outpost is here. It gives a little bit of benefit over to SortOf. The point, once again, though, is idle time. Like SortOf, he needs so much wood. He's building so many archers. He's struggling to keep up. And Zerton is at that point now. Siege engineering is now being researched. One Ram will force a fight that SortOf cannot walk away from.
And off the back of this, now you have the knight numbers to peel off 1 or 2 and just hit the other wood line, or possibly even flank around, hit the gold miners. There are a lot of opportunities now for Zerton, and he's playing this one very cautiously. This time around, it is justified because he can't afford to lose those knights. But if he keeps them alive, the raiding potential is massive.
And this is what he's been waiting for. You saw the move out. I was wondering when SortOf was going to make that maneuver to the deer to the north side. Now he has to potentially sacrifice wood to get food. He can't go east. If you check, Zerton's actually kept scouting vision out in that area on purpose because he anticipated a move towards the berry patch. It means there's only one place that SortOf can go, and that one place is still not well defended.
You mean the berries on the front?
I mean, this is ambitious. I'm trying not to vomit to this. Like, this is desperation right now. SortOf is at 0 food again. He's drained to the bone, and now they're going to pierce those bones with some arrows. Nice breach in. Nice tap a little bit. And SortOf, if he's not careful, could quickly tap GG here. He's going to be forced to fight. The Spearmen march forward, but there's barely any here. And now the Knights can overwhelm. SortOf, he miscalibrated. It's a 75% ratio of archers and enough Knights to punish him for exactly that.
You said it. It was desperation. That's the key word, and Zerton knows it. He knows that his opponent needs the food. He knows that the Spearman had to dive to kill the Ram. And now with the Spearman gone, it's only archers standing in between the TC and those Knights. Tower gone, and now Zerton can commit.
From Zerton to Zerton in this situation, the numbers are on his side, but so is that quality as well. It's just difficult for SortOf, down to 2 Spearmen, no answer to the Knights. Zerton does not dive in, though. This is showing some respect. He understands that there's enough archers here, it would lose him a few Knights, and he wants to keep that momentum, keep that advantage. In the meantime, just allow the Rams to apply pressure and force SortOf to make mistakes.
He's trying to fortify the tower out there, but he's just paying too heavy of a price, and he's gonna have no chance to stop this. Trying to expand towards more barracks, but you get the feel that this is coming too late. He's just trying to stop those Knights desperately, really.
But you get the feeling it's the wrong place as well, Lytical. Look at where he's building those racks up. Like, you're going to build Spearmen, and archers are going to stand there and kill you. Like, this is the issue you face right now. I mean, he's misreading his position. I think he doesn't respect just how many Knights there are to keep his archers at bay.
And he doesn't respect how many archers Zerton has, because 4 Spearmen here is also going to be insufficient. His eco has been heavily damaged, so in a clear archer war, Zerton's going to win, and now he's flanking around for those hunters. He knows that SortOf has to get food from somewhere, and that somewhere can only be the hunt.
And he's barely getting food as it is. He's barely hanging on. This is going to shut him down and out. Outposts do get garrisoned, but enough Knights here to torch them down. And you can see he was going for the arrow slit, so not even getting into the premium thing, which would be the fortification. Archers, in the meantime, are going to have to retreat away. Looks like Zerton chose to go trade for eco instead of taking the main fight. Minimum archer casualties, but a lot of idle economy in SortOf's base.
And Zerton sees the desperation here from SortOf. Farms at this stage of the game is a very bad sign for the Abbasid player. And off the back of this one, Zerton can just continue to raid and raid and raid, shut down the eco of SortOf, and behind this one, also start working towards his own second town center, adding additional battering rams. You really get the feel that now Zerton is turning on cruise control, and it would take a miracle once again for SortOf to mount a comeback into this. He's just too confined into his base like a prison.
Yeah, I mean, he's turned it into a prison as well. The walls are going up, all right? Nobody is allowed out of their cell at this rate. And the concern about that, that's the other reason why you're seeing all those racks and everything else being built in the front line. He doesn't have room at the back. He's used that all up, and I think that was what made Zerton suspicious, and he got the confirmation. It's actually brilliant. He sees forward production lines, and he's like, why is he doing this? He scouts around the backside, idles eco, kills a few villagers, and gets that critical info that you mentioned. The farm's going up. That's a heavy burden for SortOf, and it means he needs even more wood to keep up. He's already revealed his requirement for wood with so many archers being built.
And keep in mind that some upgrades are also lacking over here for SortOf from the blacksmith, whereas for Zerton, he's much more stacked in those as well. So even these engagements might not be favorable for SortOf. His archer numbers are right now much better, but the knight numbers, they are reaching critical levels so high that he could possibly just commit to a direct engagement. And oh, look at the interception here.
Oh no, it's the second wave of knights that come around the side onto the wood line. So many people out here. SortOf, he isn't even reacting yet. He'll finally peel back, but the idle time alone stings. That's what, 25 villagers doing nothing for you.
Oh, so good race here from Zerton. And his map presence and understanding of the state of the game is just absolutely stellar here. He knows fully well that his opponent is desperate for resources, probes each resource deposit every once in a while, and is rewarded with juicy villager picks, still keeping it even on the villager department despite playing on 1 TC against a 2 TC Abbasid player for the last 10 minutes.
Look at SortOf's food. Look at SortOf's food again. He can't keep up. Like, he's missing production in terms of military. All these buildings he's building to try and get a force together, and he's not consistently pushing out troops. That's why when you look at the numbers situation, despite the fact that Zerton has pushed out 17 of these premium knights, they are neck and neck on military pop cap. That should not be happening in this matchup.
Not at all, and you see now Zerton once again is flanking around to the north. He knows fully well that SortOf wants to expand in this direction. He tried it once, he's gonna try it again. That's the only accessible forest for SortOf, and that is something that Zerton knows fully well.
And I love the fact that Zerton continues to play pocket ecos. He's had the entirety of the map, and he plays with confidence. That's why he was able to survive on 1 TC for so long, but he's not on 1 TC anymore. He snuck one in the southern corner, which means now, not only does Zerton have the ability to potentially end the game, at this point, he will scale towards Castle Age indefinitely.
Yeah, the escalation is going to be much better, especially because he's distracting on the archers on the left side and also diving in on the right side. He has a critical mass now so that he can attack from multiple directions and once again keep SortOf confined in his base while also approaching Castle Age with the resource bank that he has. And once he gets there, I'm certain that we're going to see the Royal Bloodlines upgrade come in from the Royal Institute, because this is the moment where you just want to push the pedal down to the floor and you want to finish this game in the next 10 minutes.
I think the even bigger deal is once he techs up, those archers. 45 archers getting vetted. Like, that damage increase alone is going to make this a one-sided affair, especially considering that SortOf, like, a third of his army takes double damage against those archers. This is going to sting, and I don't think he sniffs this out. Like, there's no way that SortOf can match it either. Think about his food situation. Think about the fact that he now needs to escalate towards pop cap before even thinking castle. He's going to be a mile behind.
And the thing is that his unit composition, it's feeble against men-at-arms. Archers and spearmen, Zerton can go into men-at-arms that have the +2 attack by default in Castle Age, thanks to the French bonus. He could easily wipe this army out with 15 men-at-arms, and he has the eco to get those men-at-arms onto the battlefield. In fact, seeing the army of SortOf over here, priority for Zerton should be to start deviating with the unit composition towards the men-at-arms to take a very favorable engagement here in the next few minutes.
Yeah, for the moment, he's just going to keep probing, keep the pressure in. You can see how desperate SortOf is. It's why he took the deer away on the east side. It's why he keeps blocking him from getting these berries on the front. Without the food, he can't afford. He can't afford to keep pushing an army and getting the tech up. And now the true issue arises. SortOf is playing as the Abbasid dynasty. This is not a civ that reactionary booms well. If you need to tech up, you're locked behind a 1 and 45-second timer. That means that your opponent, as soon as you react to the tech up, probably has at bare minimum 2 minutes of advantage over you.
So, as you said, the only thing that's left here for SortOf as a chance is essentially just a push, a timing push before Zerton gets his upgrades in, but his unit composition, it's insufficient to beat the Feudal Age army of Zerton, let alone a Castle Age army now. Can't Old Settles is gonna be in for the Knights, they already have the Veterancy upgrade, and Veteran Archers also coming in there. The timing push, the probability of that, or the chance for that, is essentially gone for SortOf. He's left in an impossible position, he needs to tech up, but that's going to take so much time for him, and Zerton is not going to let him do that in peace.
And Zerton needs to take a fight faster, because if that tech up comes out, Mangonels get built in the field. And look at your composition right now. It's primarily archers, they just die. That's why he wants to fight now. That's why he wants to take this fight before the tech ups fully come out. In fact, right now, I'm kind of surprised by this. Zerton, yeah, he has actually got the tech up finally coming out with the veterancy. And this is going to allow him to easily win these fights. Like, SortOf cannot trade well anymore, but he has to. He has to hold with these strong defenses for another minute before he can even think about getting his upgrades for his units.
Exactly, and the moment SortOf gets to Castle Age, that's an indicator for Zerton that he must go. He can't stick around longer because Zerton is also so heavy on the archers, and once the Mangonels come out for the Abbasids, it's a different story. He doesn't want to push the towers in the middle, instead flanking around from the other side, and this is going to be a much juicier angle to push from.
Yep, going in now with the Knights, forcing out eco. Archers want to fight. SortOf really doesn't want to, but he's going to be forced to do so anyway. Pepper and Arrows comes out, a few Knights get thrown away. Still a lot of Spearmen here to worry about, but the line formation going to be utilized to good effect by Zerton, pushing SortOf back. He needs more from this, though. That's why the Rams are starting to push in and shuffle across as well. Numbers quickly dingling down for SortOf, but you can see he's now mixing the Camel Archers. If you can get him over here, the Knights are going to be heavily discounted. Right now, the Knights are jumping the gun, though. Royal Bloodline's only half done, and Zerton now down to 11 Knights. Might cost him dearly in the long term.
Yeah, he's paying a big price for this fight, but he still feels confident, especially with all the dead bodies from the red player littering the floor. Now there are spearmen at the back as well for SortOf.
Archers.
Yeah.
So many dead. It's like this is going to be a wipe of his entire army. The question mark then is, what does SortOf do afterwards? What do you do? How do you rebuild with this many troops left in your base?
You don't. That's the reason why Zerton is committing to this. He knows he's losing a lot of precious knights, but he just wiped the floor with the army of SortOf. SortOf has absolutely nothing left to upgrade here to Castle Age veterancy, and Zerton is still sitting on about 10 knights, actually more than that, 13, with Royal Bloodlines coming in a second. It is 4 army for SortOf against 42, with minimal chance for recovery now for the red player.
And you know, just taking a moment in the Zerton's brain there, he's like just vibing, taking the fights, and he sees a Camel Archer come out, he goes, what? All right, I've won this. Just go on full plow. Because the only reason that SortOf was trying to transition Camel Archers is in prep for the upgrades, so you could use the aura and keep them alive. You do not push Camel Archers against this many archers without a solution. It made it too obvious. The diving comes out, and also Zerton, he identified it. Remember, if you look at the House of Wisdom, you can see the wing physically being built. That was the info he needed, and now this diving is doing so much damage. Even just targeting the farms alone is shutting SortOf out due to the lack of food that he has access to on the map.
SortOf currently has 20 idols. He had up to 40 just a second ago. So much of his eco being shut down, and the chance to replenish is gone. You see, he's out of food, he's struggling with wood, barely has any gold out here. It's not the fact that he couldn't make army because he doesn't have the production or he doesn't even have the upgrades. It's the sheer fact that he doesn't have the resources to rebuild that lost army anymore, and that's something that Zerton knows fully well.
And resources are the difference maker. Something that Zerton understood in this game is that the Abbasids, they're like a rat right now. They always find a way to survive no matter what you do to them. They could have survived in this corner, which is why he went for that secondary TC. This is the detail I think SortOf wasn't aware of until now. I think he expected an eco transition point where he would have a bigger economy to work with. That never came though. Zerton always continued to push these numbers consistently, and it's why I think we're just a matter of moments away from a GG. SortOf cannot access over half of his base. This is the worst case situation for a tech up, even worse when you consider how little resources he has access to on this map.
Zerton has the chance to finish this game in the next 1 minute. As you said, he's got enough stone to drop a keep, and with the army that SortOf has, or more precisely doesn't have, he has no tools to stop a castle right next to the starting TC and the House of Wisdom.
You're building a siege workshop as the Abbasids. Just call GG.
Oh, sad. Very sad. Villagers being slain on the farms, and I feel like Zerton is just now figuring out how much SortOf is expanded to the left side and how many villagers there are to pick off. If this wasn't GG up until now, it shall be just in this very moment.
Oh my god, it's even worse. The gold that he found is now being outposted up. And the great migration of villagers, just a handful of knights will turn this into an absolute slaughter. SortOf doesn't want to give Zerton match point, but he has no choice anymore. His villagers are not playing Age of Empires 4. They're running the London Marathon.
Oh man, I mean, last time I checked the London Marathon, it wasn't this bloody. This definitely feels a lot bloodier than that. Those knights are just chasing down the villagers, and right now, you're just stuck inside those towers. Congratulations, you survived, but you won't be gathering any resources for the next 20 minutes. The villagers that are not inside towers are all being slain, and SortOf has nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Down and out of this game, Zerton moves on to match point.
SortOf, man, that obsession on that berry patch made it so obvious, man. Zerton's read on this every time. He's like, well, the Abbasids, you know, they only pay 25 food for their villagers. They can survive for a while on scraps, but he could see that he was beyond scraps there. They must have been cannibalizing at the end of that. There was such a limited amount of food that SortOf had access to, from the sheep situation to the amount of berry patches that got blocked out. Zerton read this matchup phenomenally well. Utilized the Stealth Forest in a weird way. It wasn't for this idea of gang bushing into eco. It was just this idea of looming as a threat to move out the main army. And you saw that. Like, he should respect at the right moments, but when it mattered most, he held strong and true around that wood line, especially. When he saw that SortOf needed a second wood line, he would not let him have it. And that delay especially, I think, is what completely just crucified SortOf in this one. He needed that. You saw the farms coming out. It's not just the farms, though. It's the archer requirement. It's the spear requirement. And he can never get ahead. I mean, this was remarkably well done. It's not often in a quality versus quantity matchup that the player pushing quality units keeps consistent pop cap advantage over the Zerton on match point. SortOf needs to turn it around. It needs to be a reverse sweep. Nothing less will secure him here to continue on in the monthly finals as we hop into map 3. Zerton 2-0 up, and he whips out one of the most potent civs on Lipany.
Indeed, he's gonna be in command of the Abbasid dynasty down south, down 2 games, SortOf with the Chinese in red, in a position where he almost desperately needs to turn things around here if he wants to have a chance to play in the Heidelberg LAN. His weekly points will likely be insufficient to qualify him, so he's left with limited chances, one of those being qualifying from this weekend. But so far, things aren't looking good for him. He would need to mount a reverse sweep to keep his dreams alive.
Yeah, it is a rough one. Like, SortOf so far, it's not that he's playing absolutely terrible Age of Empires. I just think Zerton's on the next level right now. And we've seen that, you know, the French Abbasid matchup really maybe surprising a lot of people how effective the standardized old French build could be from Zerton. Then game 1, just remarkably well done. Not the cleanest on either side. But that's not what Age of Empires is about, you know? Sometimes the messier it is, the better it is. And more importantly, it's not about how little you screw up. It's about how big you exploit your opponent's screw-ups. And I think on that layer, Zerton has been one level up.
Yeah, I agree on this one. Zerton has been playing stellar Age of Empires for the last 1 hour approximately. He really has exploited every single mistake of his opponent, and the map awareness he has played with was absolutely stellar. So he's been playing some really good Age of Empires here recently, and this is in line with to the expectations of many people going into this weekend. He's considered one of the most under-the-radar players right now, and possibly a sneaky candidate to qualify from this weekend.
Yeah, very talented player, like consistently posting at the top of the leaderboards, kind of cruises through at a point where, you know, you might frequently see him just miss out on day number 2. And I think that's one thing to highlight here, right? Like, this is a guy that I think usually gets pipped at the post. We've seen him, especially in the last few weeks, actually make it to day number 2 and get taken out frequently by the people that go through to the grand finals. So no pushover by any margin in the past, but definitely leveling up his game this month especially.
Yeah, in fact, it's actually very funny because, as you said, he usually gets knocked out by the guys who already qualified, but talk about the last 2 monthlies he played, he got knocked out by the Canadian brothers, once by Wham, once by Poppy Paw. So some of the most elite players of Age of Empires were the ones who knock him out usually, both from the weeklies and both from the monthlies, and that kind of makes this a little weird position for him because many people underestimate him, not because he's bad, it's simply because he's playing against some of the best players in the world. But when he's facing slightly weaker opposition, he's playing phenomenal.
And who knows? Maybe this could be the month he could make it, because actually, to make it all the way along, you dodged the Canadians. Remember, one of them's already qualified. Wham is on the other side. So I see where you're going with this, Lidicore. You're making an argument. I guess Zerton, all he has to do is beat Vortex. You know, maybe some new Shapirs, Hot, Kyo, who else? The Nyam Racing Cat. Yeah, there's quite a few talented players. I'm not gonna lie. He's definitely got a hard weekend ahead of him.
Yeah, obviously, it's just a small step for him if he qualifies or goes into the next round. It is still a long journey for him, but if he continues to play like he did today, it is going to be a reality for him. And for the time being in this game, he has done something sort of out of the ordinary. He opened with 4 Spearmen as the Abbasids, but didn't really accomplish much with those. Response from SortOf was also a handful of Spearmen, but at the end of the day, these Spearmen really didn't accomplish much here for him. In fact, I'm somewhat puzzled on what exactly the game plan could have been for him.
I think he wanted to deny the gold a little, which does somewhat slow down the Chinese, but they do, of course, have taxation to somewhat recover. It does, however, slow down those timings. And I think that's important to look towards here, is if this turns into a TC race. I actually quite favor the Abbasids as that right now. I think they're actually better than the Chinese for this. Yes, they have to get more TCs to match, but cheaper villagers means more army around that feudal timing, 15 to 20 minutes, which is important. Even if you can just delay these timings on getting Song by a minute or two, it's phenomenally huge, because yes, the Chinese are incredibly potent in the hyper late game, but the Abbasids not only are really good for hyper late game with their food wood type compositions, I think they are a lot stronger than the Chinese around that 20-minute mark, especially considering that most Chinese builds right now don't seem to feature Chuge Nu as much as they should.
Yeah, the thing is that the escalation for the Abbasids is much faster. As you said, they save up so much food on the villager production that they can transition from a very eco-focused approach to a very army-focused approach very fast. And they have a potent army in Feudal Age as well, with the Phalanx Spearmen, with the Horsemen, with the Camel Archers, or they have a good escalation to Castle Age as well. So they can capitalize on their eco advantage much faster than the Chinese can, and that's the timing window that you're aiming to hit with the Abbasids here.
And also something to consider here is like, yeah, you know, he built spears and then SortOf built spears, but who actually wants spears in this matchup? It's not the Chinese. No. The Abbasids are happy to have spears because due to Phalanx that you mentioned, they become a very effective trading unit later on in the game because you have double the amount of melee units fighting that your opponent does if you're both, for example, pushing spears.
It also throws off the Chinese a little bit more with their build because, as you said, the Chinese, they rely on taxes even in Dark Age a tiny bit. So usually gold is not really an issue. You force them to make spears, suddenly you make them strained on food, and part of the reason why he sort of had to delay his Feudal Age a tiny bit is because he had to commit a lot of food to adding spearmen rather than working towards Feudal Age. So he was floating a lot more gold than he wanted to at the beginning of the game.
And you have to think about this logically, like what's happened here is both sides have built racks. Thank you, Pigeon. That was so smart. Like I couldn't have seen that. Let me explain why that's important. The Abbasid player wants a racks in Feudal, happily. How many times do you see a Chinese player happily build a racks in Feudal?
Never.
They want it at Castle Age, right? they want the Palace Guard, but you're right, never. They do not want to build spears. They want to go to archery ranges. They want to get to Chuge Nu and stables as well. So by making this play, Zerton has already forced a transition that sets sort of 150 wood back from where he should be. And then, of course, the Spearman on top of that makes it even more worse.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up indeed, because by going for the Spearman or forcing the opponent to go for a Spearman here, in a way you dictate the tempo or you dictate the unit compositions that will be featured in this matchup. So you know that your opponent committed to a barracks, which possibly could have been a stable or an archery range if it wasn't the barracks in Dark Age. So now you know that, okay, instead of going for an archery range or a stable, my opponent has committed resources towards a barracks, so I can adjust my unit composition in order to be able to punish that a little bit more effectively than as compared to I could have possibly punished a stable or a range.
And you see a very condensed TC formation coming out from Zerton. A little bit surprised he didn't go wide. I think he's showing a lot of respect here, but I think Zerton's long-term plan is a free TC build with the third one out here. Look at that.
Yep.
No, don't deprive me of that. That, oh my god, that was food heaven on the screen. Like, SortOf is hungry after game number 2. This would quench his thirst. Unluckily for him, though, this is on Zerton's side of the map. Double deer and berry on one screen for the Abbasids. Oh, lordy.
I mean, it's a dream and a nightmare at the same time, because it's also very much exposed. So as you said, Zerton probably didn't want to expand in that direction for that reason. But for now, these Spearmen will serve a good purpose. They will just harass SortOf here a tiny bit, will also act as essentially semi-scouts, making sure that he knows what's up in SortOf's base, sees the Song Dynasty coming in with the Barbican, And as you said, he is still possibly planning to expand towards a third town center. So as long as he keeps sort of inside his base, he can, to a certain extent, even conceal it from SortOf.
I actually don't think you can seal it. I think you genuinely are that arrogant son of a gun that flexes, right, in the middle of the open. Because think about what just happened here. Zerton saw SortOf drop his Barbican defensively. I think that's what he was waiting for, and that's why he didn't go for an aggressive TC. Now that he sees the Barbican, he can get away with dropping that TC between the two wood lines or on those deer stacks.
Yeah, that's a great point indeed. And as you said, he also sees minimal aggression coming up from SortOf. SortOf feels confident with what is going to be a 2 TC Song Dynasty build for him. But this reinforces Zerton in his greed. And not only is he going to expand with a third town center, though at a somewhat interesting spot, he's also banking up resources for Castle Age. He could have a blazing fast castle with a 3 TC build. And we talked about this, the escalation from an eco-focused approach to an army-focused approach is very rapid for the Abbasids. SortOf could be caught off guard by this quite fast, especially because he's only just now dropping the second TC.
Yeah, which means he's going to stay behind, right? And like, so it's kind of weird. What you need to remember is like there's a 35% production cost by having the Song Dynasty, right? But the actual difference in production speed is closer to being like 42%, 51%, somewhere in that range. So actually being on 2 TCs with the Chinese is close to being 3 TCs. So they're neck and neck, right? No. Because one side is getting a 50% discount. So what's happened here is that Zerton is barely paying anything for 3 TC's worth of production. Meanwhile, SortOf is now paying a premium per TC. And while it seems efficient at first, it means that he's going to have to guard these pocket ecos and move out to them sooner.
Exactly, and the thing is that because SortOf is not investing that much into army, Zerton can non-stop take these berries, so he's gonna have a very good supply of food, in combination with the fact that, as you said, his expenses are minimal. He's not making army and he's barely paying anything for the villagers. He's stacking up resources like a madman, and you see he's getting ready for Castle Age, which is just going to make this escalation even better, because he's gonna get the Culture Wing. With the Culture Wing, he's gonna get a discount on attacks, and as you said, the time frame in which the Abbasids really start coming online is that 15-minute mark, and the Chinese, they start to come online beyond that 20, 22, 23-minute mark, so there is about a 6-7 minute time window in which the Abbasids could easily dominate the Chinese over here.
And the logic as to why is kind of obvious when you look at the top of the screen, right? Like these Imperial officials alone are 150 resources each. That's 600. That's a third of Castle Age spent on Imperial officials. They return it down the line, but as you highlight, it's at a delay. Right? It doesn't trigger straight away. It's not an insta return. It's not like when you go fresh foodstuffs and within a minute you're like, well, that was worth it. It doesn't play that way. And that's why it just looks like Zerton's going to be a mile ahead. Tech up already underway. In the meantime, SortOf is going all in, and I love this play. This is a brilliant read. I mentioned the Chuge Nu earlier on. I think the Chuge Nu are so underrated. People have only really started to take appreciation of them in the last 2 to 3 weeks. This is a critical component of Chinese play in both Feudal and Imperial now. Now, I won't spoil Imperial, just in case we maybe get there in this game, but you're going to see exactly why in Feudal combat.
Yeah, the answer here from Zerton is going to be the men-at-arms. You can see the barracks already being dropped, and critically, he's got a tower at the front. I love that. He only has 1 scout, so limited vision. He wants to keep it next to the enemy base, but he also doesn't want to get caught off guard by a ram push like that. He's gonna have a tower. He knows fully well that those rams are coming, and he's gonna be prepped for that with men-at-arms, and possibly even some mangonels here once he reaches castle.
Now, some people are probably wondering, why didn't SortOf just, not buy this many Chuge Nu? Because if you think about the cost of them, he could have had to tech up, right? The logic for him is that he's playing on Lipany. This is home territory for the Abbasids. You can see the food gathering rates he's going to be getting on all these berry patches. It will accelerate Zerton quicker. And with that acceleration, he's going to invalidate certain parts of your composition due to his ability to build siege in the field. So SortOf feels the pressure to go now. It's not necessarily the wrong read, but I think it's the wrong timing. And you're going to see the time is coming out. Zerton almost completed the tech up. Those man-at-arms already prepped and ready to pump out, at which stage these Chuge Nu do nothing.
Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult push, right? And Zerton can afford to sacrifice a couple of villagers for the sake of slowing this down. The army to protect this ram with is just insignificant. It's a tiny army, it has to go all the way back because you don't want to risk sacrificing them to the tower. And off the back of this, the battering ram is getting taken down rather fast here. In fact, SortOf having his army caught off guard, battering ram taking so much unnecessary damage here.
No, he didn't even commit to keep it on fire, so there's no pressure. Zerton could just back up, spray down a few more units, and once again continue to torch. Sure, he's going to lose a few villagers for this, but look at the man-at-arms count already. He's prepped 6 more, 3 are already out in the field. Once you get up to close to 10, SortOf just has to run all the way back to his base with his tail between his legs.
Indeed, the man-at-arms already popping out here, getting to the front line. The first couple of those should be enough to repel this army from SortOf. And you see, SortOf has just invested a bunch of resource into that battering ram, but got really no return value from it other than taking down a single tower.
I think that wolf is still murdering Zerton this entire time.
It's like, actually annoying. I mean, he's losing villagers to that now.
I think he, yeah, okay, so he finally, oh
No.
my god, how many is that now? How many, like, what, how?
Probably 5-6, actually. Might be the villager difference between the two players here, actually. Oh, finally. Better late than never, that's what we say for that.
Dude, that wolf goes down dead, whispering worth. He's like, I died with a full stomach, I'm happy.
I mean, I don't think his stomach was full. I mean, he could have eaten more.
I mean, it probably wasn't full at the end due to the way he just got stabbed, but I'm pretty sure in terms of like what he digested, he's feeling pretty good about life right now, you know?
Not so much for SortOf, who's already under pressure here from Castle Age forces. Does have a small villager lead, partly thanks to that wolf, and more importantly, he's walled off. That's going to buffer him up until he gets to Castle Age, so he can start thinking about possibly crossbows over here. He already has the ranges set up for that. Looks like the walls are unfinished though, opening up an opportunity for Zerton, but he seems to be careful. He knows that his opponent now is in castle and doesn't want to overcommit. He has been playing cautiously the entire set, and he's going to continue to do so.
Exactly, that's the feeling I got out of this. From the TC placements to the way he's now using the man-at-arms, like Zerton is on match point. Some people get a little bit anxious and rush to end. You can see that he's just being very calm, very collected about it. He's not rushing. However, what he needs to do is rush up some siege, because you just allowed a tech up on the Chinese. The most logical play that SortOf should be making, if you don't know, should be to suspect Nesta Bees. Nesta Bees would be so big SortOf. He hasn't queued them yet. I'd be surprised if he doesn't in the coming minutes, simply because it's a phenomenal answer to the man-at-arms. The only reason you'd hesitate, of course, is with the Abbasids, they have the ability to build that siege in the field, and we can already now see that coming out from Zerton with the Mangonel being built.
Not just the Mangonel, but you desperately need Springolds over here, and a lot of those, because SortOf can also opt to just go for his Clock Tower Springolds, so numerical advantage by itself will be insufficient for Zerton because the quality is going to be on the side of SortOf. He needs to be 100% sure. Ooh! Ooh!
That's a freebie. Damn, that's a lot of damage there.
Beautiful damage done.
Yeah, and let's think about what SortOf is building right now. This is the interesting thought of like naked vision and big braining yourself. So like Zerton wasn't sure if he needed Springolds, and he was right not to go for it because SortOf was so worried about the Springolds, he never built Nesta Bees. Instead, he's building more ranged units that are now going to be countered by this Mangonel choice made by Zerton.
And keep in mind that, speaking of ranged units, he only has 3 crossbows. Most of those are Chugenu, which are not terrible against the men-at-arms, but it's not the unit that you want fighting against the men-at-arms, especially when there is Mangonel support to this. And a scary detail here to SortOf is that he will soon be forced to fight, because if you take a look at the stone count for Zerton, he's stacking up for a keep, he's getting ready to push the pedal to the metal, push him with the men-at-arms, and drop a keep in the face of his opponent.
Yeah, it's Plowtown Central, and he's ready to farm up another win. I mean, that counter man-at-arms is getting out of control, and the issue I see for SortOf is, yeah, you're now getting the Springles to answer the Mangonel. What answers the man-at-arms? You're at 5 crossbows, you're building your own Palace Guard front line. I still feel like Zerton with strong point defenses can hold here and escalate, and we're seeing that escalation on the food side of things, right? He's just ahead. SortOf is now prepping for that farm transition. You saw the wood go up to over 1,000 a minute. This shows you that Chinese are now going farms. But that leads to delays in your military output. Long-term gains are great, but you have to get there first.
Yeah, exactly. The farm transition leaves you vulnerable, and behind this one, Zerton does have that spectacular excess of food.
I'm getting a bad feeling about this stage fight, actually. I'm pretty sure if Zerton drops the keep, he can just go into a siege workshop as well, and SortOf won't have an answer.
It's possible. He also has the chance to grab the healing upgrade for the keep, so once that goes up, or if that goes up, it's like also going to be a very strong point.
Mute himself.
What? What? No, it's you can't hear me.
I'm sure he'll come back in a second.
No, KP.
In the meantime, though, SortOf needs to find a way to come back into the series and come back hard and fast. Springle count is increasing in the meantime. You can see that Zerton is matching him. Of course, the clock tower effect on these Springles means that they are more effective one-on-one. But in mass quantities, it can get quite hectic and quite fast. And that's the thing to keep in mind, is that SortOf, if they continuously take fights where they trade out Springles evenly, SortOf will come out behind eventually, simply because Zerton's able to build more in the field quickly.
This is definitely an awkward scenario, because KP can't hear me. It's weird. Issue was on your end. Stream could hear me perfectly, so I was like, okay, how do I tell KP that Stream can hear me? It's just you cannot.
You just came back. I can hear you now. Sorry if you were talking then. This is why Discord is overrated. Damn, I
Anyways.
sound like a boomer.
Ooh, Palace Guards now flanking around. Only a single layer of Palisade walls keeping them out.
Yeah, the stone wall going up as well. Wait, what's the plan here? Am I going to trap in my own Palace Guard? Yes. You guys can only come home when you get us a win. He actually is committing to it as well. Oh, God. And the wall's on the other side.
Those guys will be trapped here, so truth be told, it's going to be difficult to get them out.
I mean, I hope he just realizes. Actually, I don't think he's fully walled that, right? It looks like he left
I don't
the
think
gap.
so.
All right, that works out nicely then.
Looks like he's not going to get through the walls here. He's going to go for Ram.
No chance. Yeah, Rams, they do get 50% bonus damage up against walls, but it's one Ram versus a stone wall. You're going to be here a while.
Yeah. And behind this one, Zerton has a key keep in the middle of this ridge. Look at the vision that he has from this. It's a hilltop position with multiple towers to give line of sight. And he's gathering stone for a second keep. Farm transition now complete for SortOf, but he still has to weather the storm here. He's going to be up against quite a lot of men-at-arms.
And there's that siege workshop we talked about on the front side, right? Zerton sets up behind the keep. He's going to hold here for the moment. SortOf, as it stands, has no solution to this. You can now see he's going into the counterweight trebuchets himself, but this is going to take time. It offers up an opportunity for Zerton to breach in the meantime, but so far it seems his only interest is in more raw units. No extra siege coming out for the Abbasids.
Yeah, he's once again playing a very cautious game over here. Once again, possibly overly cautious. He's going to take this engagement, and this is a good one. Look at that. He could even cut off the escape path. Crossbows firing from the top of the walls. That is beautiful positioning. Maximizes efficiency here. Cleans up all the forces. Might even get the Rams as an extra price.
Yeah, he'll be able to chase them down. In fact, I'd love to see Zerton just wrap around with this small group to the south side. Think about what's down there and think about what SortOf doesn't have. He didn't wall himself in. There's actually a sneak through point around the tree line near the sacred site, so you can actually wrap all the way south side and get right on top of the Chinese farms.
Indeed, there's an opening to the far left, just at the edge of the map. This is something that SortOf hasn't yet noticed.
It's pretty like it's well hidden. I think both of them didn't notice.
Oh, wait, actually, no, it's not.
Okay, we got lied to.
Yeah, minimap feels weird.
Dude, I hate this minimap right now. Like, for real. Turns out we were the small brains, Lidical.
Indeed we were. Springle is now setting up for both players in the middle. 6 versus 3, but all 3 of those are clock tower weapons for SortOf. Also pushing up with the Trebs, but looks like Zerton is now intending to push in. He's got the numbers advantage, or does he? 69 army against 72. This is closer than we initially expected.
I'm interested in the goal pull on both sides and where that's going to be going. Springles, what are they doing? Mistakes have been made. Zerton, he jumped the gun. Remember, his army was addressing the north side, so they weren't in position here. That's why SortOf's moving in. However, he will quickly move out. Shows respect over the keep. A bad trade, even though the start looked good for SortOf. Has to back out, and that means the Trebs can continue to pressure on the Barbican. Now, the upside for SortOf is whenever he has to repair this keep, he doesn't pay stone. So long term, this is a good trade for him. But short term, I don't know. I can still feel like Zerton has the edge here, especially with the crossbow man-at-arms comp at the level it is.
Yeah, population advantage is on the side of SortOf, but you get the feel that Zerton has slightly better map control. And what concerns me greatly is that Zerton is actually piling up resources off the back of this. So he's got a lot of stockpiles. So in the case of even trades, his ability to replenish army is going to be much better. But one thing not to be overlooked is the farm transition, which is something he's yet to make. So his window could slowly be closing.
Another thing that maybe can be an upside for Zerton long term, right, is when we talk about the Golden Age ticking in. But I think we're only about 40 buildings maybe chained in. So that's still a mile away. He needs to do some damage right now, and he's making his way in.
He's doing it.
Harbinger goes down. I mean, that's the opening you need. Right now, SortOf needs to take a fight, and my concern is no Nest of Bees. Still no Nest of Bees, yet you're up against this clump force of slow-moving units.
And now you only have one Springle, so even if you add them, they will be sniped down instantly from the forces of Zerton. He is now going in. He's got the stone for a forward keep even.
Dude, look at the trebuchet count as well, up to 3. He blitzes for everything. It's going to force SortOf's hand, and you can see what he's being forced to do. He's transitioning to Horseman, has hit it for the moment, but you don't feel good about this long term. If you have to rely upon this in your comp, it means that Zerton will go back for spears and wipe you out.
That's exactly it. For now, it's only crossbows and men-at-arms from Zerton pushing deeper and deeper. Takes down the village. This will force SortOf to rebuild it instantly, because otherwise it's going to be housed for a long time. Missed micro of the Springles, though. But here come the villagers, and there is the chance for a castle.
Shivs out, boys. You're now frontline units. We haven't got any man-at-arms right now. I don't know where they are. Lost in transition.
Oh, here it comes.
Outpost going up.
Oh, Mangan on fire.
Trebuchets are doing good damage in the meantime. They're going to peel back, and now Horseman peeling around to the side is going to force a reaction. Zerton, slow to get troops on the front line. This is the cardinal sin he's making. A slow static army, yet all of his production is still all the way back at home. It means if he loses an army once, he can't instantly get them back on the front line to hold that line. That's why you're now seeing SortOf regain ground.
Yeah, momentum is being lost over here by Zerton. He's also being distracted by quite a lot of raids from Horsemen from both directions, really. Has to address issues like Rams pushing through his walls, and this is buying precious time here for SortOf.
That's the same Ram from before. Like, it's genuinely, like, it watched all of its parents die because, you know, the Palace Guard and the crossbows made it, right? And now it's just the vengeance story, but looks like it will be torched in the end. The few Palace Guard here were not able to defend, and what is it with people and squirrels in this game?
That heal might make line of sight wacky.
Yeah, I imagine that's doing someone there. I remember the good old days of King of the Hill in official rotation for exactly that reason. Definitely kind of a tricky one. I mean, the crazy part is that Zerton built that keep so long ago, and he's barely been forced to repair it. In fact, if you look, he's holding 2,000 stone surplus because of the lack of repairs required.
Yeah, and because he wanted to drop extra keeps, but he wasn't able to. And behind this one, now SortOf is taking over. Imperial Age coming in here for the Chinese player. We talked about this one. Chinese starting to come online at 23-24 minutes. That's exactly the timing that SortOf is looking for. And this time around, he's taking good trades as well.
Yeah, really good trades. Like, Zerton is jumping the gun there, and now he's in trouble. Like, if he goes for a tech up, over 2 minutes behind, the Chinese are now reaching a point where their eco is floated so high that they can just keep an infinite push going. And the only downside they had is this vision on the high ground, but now with the forward outpost finally there and no trebuchets to counter it, he's free to siege down that keep and then flood into the Abbasid base.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you have to remember, Zerton is still lacking that farm transition. Barely any farms out there. He was counting on that timing push to happen, but it never really materialized. SortOf was able to distract him and hold him off just enough to have his farm transition complete, and now the granaries are playing for their price. Suddenly, SortOf is more alive than ever.
Yeah, it's going to take quite the miracle for Zerton at this stage. I think he maybe has begun the farm transition, or is about to. But even then, I mean, this is getting dicey. Yeah, you can see the farms now online, expending a lot of wood to do so, which means he's not building his military line thicker to reproduce. In fact, those wood lines in safe locations are also drying up fast, which is going to draw him into the center more. A center that SortOf is quickly taking control of.
Yeah, and once Imperial Age upgrades come in, suddenly this is something that SortOf can push. He's going to have the extra range on the Springolds, and from that point on, taking those siege versus siege fights for Zerton is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, Zerton needs Horsemen. He needs Horsemen as his only redeeming factor right now. And it is not counted at this very moment, right? The Palace Guard are somewhat annoying, but it's not the Spearmen you'd have to worry about. If I see anything less than Horsemen, though, I feel like it's just GG. Like, I don't see a way in which you stop SortOf from crawling in.
Yeah, SortOf is now spamming Palace Guards into the crossbowmen of his opponent, getting most of his infantry wiped out, but he's going to be rewarded with the Springald trades. He's already in the transition, though, towards the Horsemen, and now he's going to dive in on the crossbows. Numbers advantage once again on the side of SortOf, and he's now able to wrap around with some of the units because he's got so much on the front line that he can spare a couple to be detached from his main force.
Yeah, and SortOf isn't doing that one-trick pony that we see out the Chinese at the moment, which is just Chuge Nu spam. Because of the Mangonels, he's respecting Zerton and what he can do. Once Mangonels stop getting produced, though, SortOf is just going to spam Chuge Nu. They're a cost-efficient unit. It's going to sound weird, but hear me out. When you reach Imperial Age with Chuge Nu, they actually become a frontline unit. They're tanks because of the Spirit Way. The Spirit Way that heals 20 health over 10 seconds and gives an attack speed buff allows you to push in with this as your new frontline unit, and it's actually pretty cost efficient to use this instead of melee mosh pit type units like the Spearman and like the Palace Guard.
Looks like the keep is now under heavy fire from the trebuchets here. You need to take it down, though, because SortOf's villagers on the woodline are getting slain by it. And as you said, Chuge Nu could be a great addition, but it looks like Palace Guard is the backbone of the army for SortOf, now reinforced by premium units, hand cannoneers they are. And suddenly, this army looks more alive than ever, could force a decisive engagement here in the middle, and Zerton doesn't seem to have the force to stop this one with.
Yeah, this is where the snowball effect starts to come in. I mean, it's just Zerton fighting from behind. He hasn't even triggered his tech up. There is no way back into this. He's gonna call the GG. It looks like SortOf can get a point on the board and maybe keep the dream alive, as now, with Zerton still on match point, SortOf is finally able to strike back.
What a game. What a game by SortOf, and really slowing down the game is what mattered here the most. He was able to wall himself off, buffer up this aggression, and then just reach his timing. We talked about the timing difference between the two civilizations. The escalation came too slow here for Zerton. SortOf was able to punish that by taking a little slower approach, a little bit more defensive approach, and distracting his opponent just enough to get by himself time to make that transition into Imperial, and from that point on, play from the most powerful position the Chinese can be in.
Yeah, I think actually what SortOf done a really good job of here is on a map that's very condensed, limited points of access, he managed to get flank attacks in. He drew Zerton to the backside, and I think Zerton overreacted to this. He just needed some stonewalls up, maybe a static defense, but he sent like a third to a half of his main army at one stage to deal with that. And I think that set him back. Like you said, SortOf done a great job of delaying this game to the point where the Chinese begin to take control. And I think Zerton just missed that window with that distraction. That was the key detail here. Other thing to maybe look at is Zerton. I highlighted that he was playing very safe, which, you know, can be sometimes better than playing too risque. But I think you need to flirt a midpoint. And my issue here is his TCs were way too condensed, and there was no logical reason behind it. I think if he played out onto the deer and out onto the looser berries in the center, he probably has a stronger economy in the next 5 or 6 minutes, and it maybe gives a more powerful timing for this push-in that he attempted with.
Both, once again, a mirror matchup. A matchup where small details matter, execution, small micro things could matter. Something that Zerton felt a lot more confident with in the first 2 games. But Zerton lost game number 3 to SortOf. SortOf stepped up his game. Let's see how he can do here on Frisian Marshes, the first home map of Zerton, for a chance of SortOf to even this out and push it into game number 5.
We opened this series with a mirror matchup. It could end with a mirror matchup. SortOf has begun to bite back, but Zerton still kind of dictating pace, being a game up. Let's see if SortOf can drag this the mile or if it is going to close out as we hop into good old Frisian Marshes for an HRE mirror.
Well, let's take a look at how many scouts we have. This is one of the bigger debates.
Like, well, we've seen the second scout come out, right? It's been produced on each side. That's what I was going to highlight first. Like, you have to on this map. There's just too many sheep, and you want it too badly.
I beg to differ. In fact, I've spoke to a couple of pro players, and the thing is that with the extra time it takes to make the second scout, it's not necessarily worth it. So, if you take a look at Frisian Marshes, one of the things you have to conclude is that the sheep spawn is very predictable. Most of the sheep spawn around your own base. You can take that with 1 scout very easily. And then you have some sheep scattered across the, this time around, eastern side of the map, so the pond side of the map. But that doesn't necessarily justify adding a second scout. You can, and you're going to be rewarded with some extra sheep over your opponent. But I feel like, especially with the extended training time on the scouts, it is no longer mandatory or straightforward to go for the second scout to collect those few extra sheep that are scattered across the map.
I think you have to look at this like mutually assured destruction logic, right? Like, you know, I'm going to produce more scouts because you produce more scouts. If your opponent suspects you're going to bring more scouts, you have to. Because otherwise, like you just said, you know, the patterns are predictable. Yes, I agree. But you're talking about 2 scouts going down predictable patterns versus 1. So I can get more sheep and I can get a decent amount. Like we're talking, what is it, 26, 28, something like that. There's a lot of sheep on this map. If I get an extra 7 or 8, it's worth it because it means I can play condensed under pressure better than you. I think the players that are going for this 1 scout only build, I'm not going to build any extras. Their deviation here would be if my opponent goes to second scout, I'm going to go for a second TC earlier, and I'm going to play it onto the ponds. But I've watched a lot of Zerton in the past. I haven't caught too much of SortOf, but I think he's playing maybe a little bit older of a style of HRE. I'm not necessarily expecting either of them to go for an extension TC onto those ponds.
Yeah, I don't expect that either. And the thing is that, as you said, in a mirror matchup, first of all, the difference is really inflate. So, as you said, if the opponent is going for a second scout, you kind of have to go for that too. And probably the bigger thing here is that HR is a little less time sensitive, especially if you don't want to go for a second TC. If this was a matchup where, let's say, you're up against French and you wanted to go for an expansion TC, nailing that timing for a second TC so it's at a favorable spot is much more valuable. This time around for the HRE, they are in no rush to reach feudal, so you can justify adding that second scout a lot better than in the case of a matchup where you might have a much more time-sensitive feudal age.
Something that people are sensitive about, I mean, maybe it is kind of the new RNG matchup, actually, since the Mongols got a little bit rebalanced with the Gur, is if someone gets the holiest of resource placement, right? Well, that's what we're looking for. I gotta say, actually, there's a decent one for Zerton because of the deer. Those deer are tight. With the berries as well, oh lordy. Sure, he won't have wood, but with all this sheep, like this could easily turn into a Castle Age plus rush. And if it does, I actually think Zerton has more surplus eco safe to boom up with than SortOf does.
Yeah, the value is great over there. It's going to buff the town center or the sheep under the town center, but the extra food is what matters. As you said, if you compare it to SortOf's Aachen Chapel, SortOf is only buffing the sheep under his town center, but not the berries and not the hunt. And you see Zerton, he's going to commit one of those scouts to just push in the deer. He's going to be rewarded with around 2,000 extra food with spectacular gather rate, actually.
Yeah, honestly, like when you compare these two Aachen Chapels, especially with the priority now being on tech ups, in my opinion, on both sides, like SortOf's Aachen Chapel looks sucky, right? Because he got gold and wood. That feels rough. Like, if you got wood and food, you can say, I'm going to play a prolonged feudal. What do you do with gold and wood?
Not much. I mean, you can make siege weapons in Castle Age, but that's not your primary goal.
No, yeah, and you have to reach castle, and like you're not really going to rush sieges HRE and HRE mirrors because mangonels aren't going to get that much value, right? You're going to be up against man-at-arms and spears that'll rush you. So, like, it's awkward, but I think SortOf with this build, if he turns into a race and we're saying none of them make a mistake in optimizing, Zerton's going to be clearly ahead. So, SortOf, if he scouts this out, might also feel that way and choose to do feudal aggression instead.
Yeah, he's working towards either a tower with the stone miners or possibly a second town center, but he's already slower to feudal age than his opponent. Zerton decided to rush up the Aachen Chapel with what was like 7 villagers. But the problem for SortOf right now is that he's nowhere close to putting up any level of aggression, whereas for Zerton, he's already leveraging the hunt and the Aachen Chapel as well, could possibly even flirt with the idea of going for survival techniques, skyrocket his food eco, rush castle and capitalize on the lancers and the ability to secure relics.
I was about to say about survival techniques, the only reason he might decide against it is simply because he hasn't built a mill. Remember, the HRE don't really see as much value in mills because they don't tend to go for wheelbarrow before Castle Age, and it's just another sidestep along the way. Like, we have got a little bit of wood being gathered, but Zerton is optimized for castle, so I think his intent is just to get the wood required for the stables and get castle as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. Indeed.
Wow.
Barracks coming out here. I feel like he's just a little scared about possible horsemen coming in here. It's going to prove useful in the future as well because he can start adding some extra men-at-arms once he gets to castle. He might even have scouted the stable, so it's essentially a reaction to it. But the thing is, it's not a massive deviation from his current build. It's actually a bigger deviation for SortOf because SortOf wants to play 2 TCs, but he's still far away with the wood. He's far away from doing any damage with those horsemen. And his opponent, look at Zerton, he's getting ready for castle already.
Wow, and also, SortOf is gathering from a straggler tree. So he's not even, like, you talked about his TC being slow. Like, there's multiple reasons behind this. You saw he actually cancelled in the end because he wants that TC so quickly. He just crippled himself. Like, I actually like the racks plus the stables because he could have forced a prolonged feudal. But
it's too late.
It would have been tight. Yeah, it would have been tight. Like, and now it's definitely going to be too late. But, like, I don't think from this position you can play slow castle and feel good. Like, you need to mount pressure. And I at least like the idea of the racks because he was trying to do that. But now Zerton's going to get castle for free.
Exactly, and you see second TC coming up here for SortOf, but the relics that Zerton's gonna be able to get will easily offset the villager difference for the time being. And then once really the villager difference becomes a reality, Zerton can start picking up villagers with the knights he has. That Castle Age power spike, the ability to pick up the relics, to get men-at-arms, to get the knights out, is much more valuable for Zerton than that second town center is for SortOf.
And let's think about what SortOf done in the end. Like, he went TC, he only built stables. He actually doesn't even defend very well. Zerton has the counter unit, so he can just spam spearmen. And we've actually seen what 20, 30 spearmen can do, right? They can torch down a TC. They don't care. Yeah, they're going to lose a few lives doing so, but it's totally worth the trade. So it's problematic for me from SortOf. And you can see he's now going back for the racks, but once again, you're not really answering the spears. And in fact, with the tech up coming up so much quicker than for Zerton, it means that he can actually react to both units you spammed by simply fielding a few Langsneck in the mix.
Exactly, or just men-at-arms even. That also works perfectly fine here for Zerton if he wants a more general-purpose unit with higher survivability. But yeah, the point is here that even if you pick off some of those pellets, it is just too slow for SortOf. You have a great eco with the HRE, but the escalation, the transition from an eco-focused approach to an army-focused approach is rather slow, and it is going to come in much faster for Zerton, who can capitalize immediately on those relics, first one already being brought back.
Boom. Well, we'll get a little bit of space as more spearmen arrive to guard. And yeah, there's 3 horsemen here. There's nothing they can do. Both spear retinues are ready to defend against this, and it's just problematic at this stage. The second prelate coming out to make sure he's going to get healed. Dude, I love this detail out of Zerton. It's just, it feels like you're griefing your opponent at this stage. Like, yep, these horsemen can't do anything. Although it does seem like Zerton's getting a bit too ambitious with the pull away. He's healing the wrong unit. Whoops.
I think he was happy with that. He knew fully well that he was gonna kill the horseman, and trading 3 horsemen here for 1 prelate and still securing that 1 relic is valuable. He picks off another horseman, and SortOf is down to 1 horseman. Little to no potential to contest those relics. Zerton is gonna have an easy time picking up at least 2. He's already bringing back 2 home, and he could have possibly more than that.
I mean, this is an easy 4 relic game. I actually think 100%, because now, like, you could reinvest in horsemen, but the cost to do so, especially with the guards of spearmen on the way, it doesn't make sense. You're just better off spamming spears if you want to try and counter him out. But even that alone is going to suck, right? Because in the coming minutes, Zerton, if he has to keep investing in spears, he's going to upgrade to castle spears. You can't trade anymore. This is really frustrating and perplexing what SortOf has done here. And you can see that frustration. Look what he's now building. You don't see this often. He's spamming man-at-arms now as the HRE in Feudal Age.
Oh, that's so sad, especially because Zerton can do the exact same thing, but in Castle Age, and it's not just the veterancy upgrade that makes the difference. The real difference maker would be the 2-handed weapons, or more importantly, heavy maces. Once you have maces for those man-at-arms, Zerton is gonna dominate those engagements.
Exactly, the maces are incredible. Like, the upgrade in terms of like, normal versus Feudal Age man-at-arms is big enough, but then when you consider the 50% extra damage you get from heavy maces, give you +6. Phenomenal, overwhelming ability to take fights against SortOf. And SortOf, he's now all in. Like, you can see what he's doing. Marching drills, more man-at-arms, more racks. He has a timing here. If he hits the 15-minute mark with maybe double the count of troops that Zerton has, there's a way. My concern, though, is Zerton, if he sees this amassment occurring, and he just sprinkles a few Langsneck in, it's like the special spice, you know? It's what really brings the ingredients alive.
True. Conversion, not going to happen. Buy some time for a prelate over here. This little guy got caught off guard. Spearman didn't really bother push, or defending him rather. Other prelate could also be intercepted, but this is actually pretty key. He sees the man-at-arms. Zerton now knows that there are men-at-arms coming, and he needs to be prepped for that.
Yeah, he lost the scout, but he'll continue to retreat. And, you know, the prelate maybe gets sacrificed, but it's the info, like you just highlighted. It's totally worth it. And you can see the prep coming out. The spearman upgrade's finally going to be there. He's still going to keep pushing knights. And he's justified now in the fact that SortOf isn't spamming spears only. He's spamming man-at-arms, and that's a heavy burden at 100 food a pop.
Yeah, exactly. He's just stuck in Feudal Age. For the time being, he's fine with that because he's got a second TC. But if Zerton realizes what's going on, he's going to start adding his own men-at-arms. He also now has the mobility advantage with Lancers, so he can start trickling in those Lancers to pick off villagers and compensate for the eco deficit.
Does need to get more of the relics bank though. You can see the gold is a little bit lagging behind for Zerton. Like, food is good and it should sustain for a little bit while longer. It's not really going to compete with SortOf simply because he's doing the best food possible, right? He's gathering the shoreline fish, which is a 1.4 gathering rate if you're buffing with Holy Inspiration. In fact, that's the only concern for me. If you look at SortOf's base, like, he has a lack of prelates, so I don't think he's buffing the entire pond.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a mistake here. He could get a little closer to the pond to buff them.
Yeah, there's too many villages. Like, there's just too many villages, right? He's getting his tech up, though, and it looks like it is going to be the Regnits. There is still, what, 2 relics available to him? The third one is on the way back. So Zerton does get the lion's share, and I mean, this tech up, you feel like SortOf has to do it, but the weird part for me is he's kind of dabbled in this mix of feudal aggression and trying to get castles as quickly as possible. It's left him weaker on both fronts.
And left him weaker when it comes to mobility. He's now up against full knights, and he's gonna be slow with that army, mostly infantry, only a handful of horsemen in there. So suddenly, Zerton can stretch out the playing field, and that's exactly what he's aiming to do here. Look at that tower, even having a relic inside here to help out against those horsemen.
Free little kill there, and these knights just unaddressed. Limited spears for SortOf to react with, and the spread out comes out. Zerton probably sensing this tech up timing coming, because he hasn't seen SortOf mass into a bull and push into his base yet. That means we'll be able to intercept as soon as SortOf plays towards those relics. Plus side for fans of SortOf, 1 relic is free because it's right next to that Regnitz. But everything else, a high price is going to have to be paid.
Yeah, he's in the lead by 12 villagers, but obviously his opponent has been sitting on 3 relics now for some time. And I think he was on 1 relic for 2 or 3, 4 minutes time now. So that eco difference is essentially offset by the relic advantage that Zerton has. And now he has the Lancers to pick off villagers and compensate for his lower amounts of villagers.
And let's keep in mind that food advantage you have is now being evened out, right? Zerton's playing onto the ponds, as we saw with those outpost placements, so he's going to get the great food rates, and he needs them. Like, he went to Knights. In fact, that's the reason why he gets away with this, because it's a two-pronged assault in that I'm getting better economy, and then I'm assaulting you with Knights. So you can't punish me for going out into ponds, because I'm going to dive your base and put you on the defensive, which is what we're now seeing.
And dive he does, loses a couple of Knights here on the right side as he's flanking around, but that means that the infantry is pulled to the right, leaving the opening there for the Knights on the north to dive in, and forcing a lot of idle time. A bit of a premature fight here for Zerton, doesn't want to take that. But look at that, 10 villagers, non-stop idle for SortOf. His entire food eco is just a train wreck right now.
Yeah, Zerton, I think that was a little bit of a train wreck of fun on the south side. He could have split off into additional groups and chased the Prelate. It's going to be a relic being picked up in the end. I think he just spotted it. Maybe he's moving to intercept as he sees he can't pick it up here now arriving. But, I mean, that probably shouldn't have happened. I think there's too many Knights here for Zerton to allow that relic to be picked up for free.
Yeah, it looks like he's focusing on the army instead. He's fighting against veteran spearmen. He does have one Prelate to heal. Comes in from the behind. This is a cleanup. Or is it?
Zerton, he's going to turn it around. Like, it's a good fight for him. There's just not enough spears here. Problem is the price is high. You do take a lot of damage on each of these Knights. Plus side, you can peel them back to base and heal up with additional Prelates. But so far, Zerton isn't really spamming Prelates anymore. He's stopped, which, you know, you'd say, what? You're missing out on a big opportunity here. Let's think about this logically. He's playing Knights. So how are Prelates ever going to keep up to heal people in the fights?
It's very much an open map, so you can't really pursue those Knights with the Prelates out here. He took a rather suboptimal fight against those spearmen, but he just felt like it is so important for him to get rid of that army and then just assert dominance over the enemy, really. And now he's got full map control. SortOf is into spearmen entirely, so an easy pivot into Landsknechte, which is something that we might see from Zerton in a second, could wipe out everything that SortOf has.
Yeah, this is kind of starting to reminisce of those times where you watch a Knight spamming French player that doesn't understand why they're losing because they never transition. I think this is the point of transition, Zerton. Like, don't be arrogant about this. Don't just spam Knights. You're up against spears, and SortOf has the ability to spam a lot of them. They also have great movement speed to intercept. Yes, it's an open map, but this is the perfect time to switch up, and this is a cool switch up. Zerton is now going in for the buff militarily. The Prelates will now be able to juice up the frontline infantry, and the infantry of choice are going to be Langsnecht to answer this Spearman Ball.
This could easily be a 5-second vibe against the army of SortOf.
Yes.
SortOf is using a single unit over here to a certain extent out of desperation. He's just expecting Knights. He should know that there's a deviation in the unit composition for Zerton, or there will be one at one point. But SortOf is not in a position right now to make a tech switch himself. So he's going to be, to a certain extent, caught off guard by all those Landsknechte. And for Zerton, he's going to play this one patient. He's going to heal up. He's going to wait for one decisive engagement because he knows that one good push could easily cut his opponent off from all accessible food, possibly.
I'm trying to figure out what SortOf is doing with all this gold. I think he must be trading it to a certain extent. He's now going Knights. Oh my, oh my. That is not a healthy comp, not against what's coming. Zerton is already up to 8 Langsnecht, and your solution is to spam Knights. Now, that would be good if it was just Langsnecht, but this front line of Knights is so bulky for Zerton, they will block any attempt to snipe out the infantry.
And the Knights, they take so much time to... Oh, Relic is not garrisoned. There's a second tower,
wait,
and the Prelate,
what?
you see... The Prelate is holding the Relic right next to the tower. Okay, he just now dropped it off. 2 buff towers. But villagers, they'll have to fall back, and you gotta be really careful grouping up against the Landsknechte there.
Yeah, but Zerton's gonna be careful as well. He's gonna give respect. You can see the damage that comes out from these
wants to go in
with the Relic.
That's why.
And he needs siege as well. Now that he sees his defenses, he wants to show a bit of respect. He could wrap around, but it's going to take time. And that tech up, it's just logical at this stage. I mean, SortOf can't match your pace. He's been so much slower. He's been 2 relics versus 3. Little does Zerton know what we know, which is has been less than 2 relics for a while. And now with this tech up, he'll just bide his time. And when he does get juiced up into Imperial with the tech unlocks, these Langsnecht, they are going to cleave through with that Inspired Warriors buff.
And it also forces SortOf's hands. SortOf won't be able to stay inside his base a lot longer. He wants to get SortOf out of his base. He doesn't want to fight under those towers. He just wants to lure him out and then take one decisive engagement. But SortOf has no desire to leave his base. And truth be told, he's down 1 relic, but he's also working towards Imperial. And now, with the help of those 2 towers, he's also adding his Landsknechte. He's got a strong defensive position. And if Zerton doesn't push him, there's a chance that SortOf is gonna get to Imperial as well, and we could be in for a long game here. You get the feel that once again, Zerton is playing a little too cautious, and this is something that SortOf could exploit, just like we saw it in game number 1, I think.
Yeah, he hasn't shown me that killer instinct in these last 2 games. I think like he's doing well with his early mid game, and then he's just going way too complacent. Oh, these Langsneck, dude, you can see the glowing warriors right now. Like the Emperor's chosen children. I mean, these guys, like that. If you're wondering how good this buff is, well, with the Inspired Warriors, these Langsneck, they usually do 17 damage. It puts them up to 20, which is what they get with their elite status. When you elite them up, oh lordy, that cleave can clean up fast. But right now, he's the one being cleaned up. Mistakes made there. The formation shuffle sticks the prelates at the backside and means he's going to lose the buff as he takes the fight. The pushing continues, and SortOf now covering his own tech up while beginning to punish Zerton for his own.
He's willing to sacrifice the Spearman over here just to buy him time, and look at that. Spreads out the Spearman, takes down all the Landsknechte, and as you said, Zerton might have gone a little too passive here, only has Knights left against a flood of Spearmen in a game where his opponent is also reaching Imperial. This game is much closer than we initially thought, and SortOf is still in this one pretty well, actually. Oh my goodness, look at that.
Oh god, what's happening with these Knights? They get their upgrade just as they all die. So it's kind of like a post-mortem medal situation. Congratulations on your fight. Let me just pin this on your corpse. Oh lordy. Langsneck will at least give him back his territory as he's one relic down, just parked on the ground in front of him. And SortOf, these spearmen are doing God's work right now. They're buying so much time because behind this, SortOf is now going all in on cavalry. Why? Because SortOf set up defenses. Zerton did not. Look at the map. Walls everywhere in red, but none for the blue.
And I love this from SortOf. He understands that he has to sacrifice the army to buy himself time to get to Imperial, but also takes down the tower, so Zerton is now sitting on 2 relics, evens it out, and if you take a look at the ecos, there is still a slight lead for SortOf in that department. If he can leverage mobility, if he can start raiding, he can easily pin Zerton inside his base, and he could take over this game. This game is very much a possibility to be won by SortOf, and let's keep in mind, Zerton is at match point. SortOf wins this, we go to game number 5.
And then I'm really concerned because right now, like Zerton, is in this situation where he's been match point. Match point is the bane of his existence. The guy we've seen in this game, the last one, is completely different to the first 2. Now, that's not to discredit SortOf. I definitely think he's improved, especially game 1 compared to these. Like, it's day and night difference. But overall, it does feel like Zerton, every time he gets the lead, there's this hesitation. And this hesitation is costing him dearly.
Yeah, sometimes patience pays off, but you get the feel that he's playing cautiously. Stakes are high in this matchup. Someone, actually 2 people from the 16 that plays this weekend will qualify for Heidelberg, and he wants to be one of those. He's playing cautiously, he wants to avoid mistakes, but it also means that he's possibly losing momentum in some cases because he's missing opportunities, and this is something that SortOf is exploiting greatly.
Yeah, I think the key part for me was when Zerton arrived at his opponent's base with all these Knights, and instead of just going in, throwing them away onto village accounts and slaughtering as best he can or forcing idle eco, he lingered on the eastern front. Like, that's the difference. Zerton in game 1 and 2, I think, would have been in there. And in fact, maybe you could argue, like, his playstyle kind of fits that style, right? If you think about game 2, he built up this massament of forces on the edge of his opponent's base, and he just kind of strained him until SortOf broke. But there was never that consistent strain this time around. It felt like Zerton, he wasn't sure where he wanted to go in, and now, although he's starting to kind of get some defenses up and get some mid-map control, there is still a crawling concern, or a creeping concern rather, over what's next. Because these last 2 fights have been SortOf favored, and with the composition they're both building, it will continue to be SortOf favored.
Yeah, once again, Zerton is just going full cavalry over here, only has 2 infantry units, and look at that. SortOf is back into Spearman this time around with the riveted chainmails upgrade and the elite status. Very bulky, very strong castle, actually Imperial Age Spearman from the HRE now. Something that can easily take down everything that Zerton has, really.
And also now layering in Langsnecht as well. I just love this composition because with the Spearman up in elite stats and Langsnecht as well, they kind of have a similar look to them, a similar aesthetic, as for some reason, don't ask me why. When Spearmen get upgraded from Castle to Imperial, they take armor off. I don't like this is some MMO like sleek sexy clothing's logic, right? You know what I'm talking about, where it's like, yes, this G-string definitely provides me 500 armor.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those nights, right? Like, as the time goes on, you are going to get more and more undressed, you get the feel.
And well, is that where you get more powerful? I feel like more. Yes, the confidence levels with the intoxication, I agree, but the rest of it not so much. Lytical. I just think someone on the development team is like, this looks cooler. This doesn't make sense, but it does look cooler.
I mean, you know, swag is an important part of this game. If we don't have in-game skins, we might as well just resort to cooler-looking Spearman and Imp.
Hey man, I wouldn't rule it off the table. Maybe a little bit of freemium modeling in the future for AOE4.
Speaking of freemium, a couple of villagers could be freebies here for our red player.
Oh my
He's got
god,
the
the spin
Landsknecht
getting
there.
freebie. Yeah, look at the damage now being done. The spin being cleaned up. Mistakes made there. Zerton trying to hold in this choke point, but reinforcements have arrived for the red, and now Zerton will bleed red. No way he's getting this keep up. More reinforcements come, and the second villager pull could be the saving grace, but he needs to work fast if he wants these static defenses online.
And SortOf has to fight for this one, because behind this... Ooh, that's a terrible fight.
Are bad fights. Yeah, these are bad
Zerton
fights
is
left and
distracted.
right.
He's really distracted here.
Well, it's because he's trying to defend the sacred sites, right?
Yep.
SortOf is pressure to come out, but there's 8 minutes left on the timer, and Zerton is trying to defend it all the way through before he's set up appropriately. It means he's going to be shut down before he can get the defenses online.
As you pointed out, match point, the bane of his existence. He's so close so far. Maybe he felt like, okay, I'm just gonna defend the sacred sites and win this set, go into the next round. But SortOf is like, not so fast, my little fan, because I'm gonna decap it, I'm gonna stop your castle, and look at the army numbers now. 48 to 18, with a chance to stop the second keep even.
He's heading in. No Landsknecht here, so it won't be a quick cleave down the villages,
Go
but the
up.
block comes out long enough. The keep should go up. However, the price is going to be several villages as a mission. And even then, SortOf can just sidestep this. He doesn't need to necessarily fight here. Look at the map. It's so open because Zerton has not built up any walls, and SortOf agrees. He dives in deep with the horseman. He's going to peel back the veil and have a look at what Zerton looks like inside.
Look at Zerton's food eco. He desperately needs these spawns now above all.
Oh,
Barely
Lord.
any farming set up. And he's got no mobility to chase these horsemen with.
I mean, this farm is set up for failure right now. Keep in mind, Zerton never got wheelbarrow. He's only now researching it. So these
Oh, my
villagers
goodness.
trying to run away from peril don't even do so quickly.
Oh my goodness, this is now a snowball, you get the feel, because Zerton pinned inside his base with a very slow-moving unit composition, only spearmen in his army, desperate to chase down the horsemen that just keep trickling in. And from this point on, SortOf is the one dictating the fight. He's going to keep raiding and raiding, while also starting to mix in counter units to those spears. SortOf, if he can keep this momentum up, he has this game.
Yeah, he's getting map control very quickly here. And, you know, look at the timing, the fact that wheelbarrow doesn't come out. I think Zerton started researching wheelbarrow when the keep was approached, right? When he passed that point. Like, honestly, when you go for wheelbarrow that late, the only thing people are carrying home in that wheelbarrow is the corpses of their loved ones. It's going to cost you dearly. And now this snowball continues. SortOf is into the premium siege. All these defenses are not going to last long.
Zerton is just stuck at 4 spearmen right now. No direct response from SortOf just yet, but all he needs to do is just mix in some Landsknecht. That's something that he just started doing. And we talked about this horseman plus Landsknecht, a deadly composition for the HRE. And the swarm of units now coming in here for SortOf. He's got a StarCraft background, but not with Zerg, with Terran. This time around, though, he's Zerging his opponent like a madman.
Mirror matchups. You're always looking to see who's got the better composition, who's doing a little bit better, and it feels like they're doing that in this one. Earlier on, we saw SortOf amassing spears. Zerton goes, that looks like a pretty good comp. So he copies it. And in the meantime, SortOf, he saw the Landsknecht and how effective it. That looks like a pretty good comp. I'm going to take that. They're swapping places, but every time they swap places, SortOf somehow gets a little more out of it. And with it, he crawls a little bit closer to drawing this out to a 5th game.
Marching drills just now coming in here for SortOf, or actually Zerton rather, so being
late.
delayed.
Yeah, it's so late. Like, remember, SortOf got it early. He got it in
Yep.
feudal age. He's been ready for this the whole while. He's been able to dictate where they fight and how they fight. And Zerton can only say, what time do I need to show up?
What time does he need to show up to be slain? Riveted Chainmail also coming in very late compared to his opponent. The army for SortOf was just much more set up for these engagements, and you see that on the battlefield. Blue corpses littering the battlefield out there. SortOf is more than happy to take these engagements, also knocking down keeps in the process, and now he's stretching out the field so much.
Yeah, he's back in the base again. He's like, hello, have we set up any more eco back here? No, okay, just passing through. I'm going to head to the east side where all your eco is and it's unguarded. Bye! It's so frustrating right now. Like, you have to wonder, at what stage does Zerton think, walls are a really good idea right now. Like at what state? How many times do horsemen have to get to the back of your base before you go, I should probably build a wall? How many villagers have to die trying to kill a bombard, for God's sake? Oh my
God.
This is short.
So many wounds that he's bleeding from. Lumberjacks being slain, villagers getting picked off, his food eco collapsing. And you really get the feel that this has sort of written all over it. Army numbers are equalizing and he still has the 2 sacred sites, but the bleed is just too rapid. He's just being wounded in so many directions, not even noticing his lumberjacks being slain.
I mean, you know what my ruling is. When the charity wolf gets involved, that's when it's really bad. Like, when Gaia units are trying to help Zerton win the game like they were on that berry patch, that's when you know things are bad. Like, SortOf is in full control right now. I mean, sure, there's lots of gold for Zerton, but what does he need gold for, Lidicor? His entire comp is anti-gold.
And he needs food, but he doesn't have that. Only 1,000 per minute. As compared to 2,000 on the other side for SortOf, who is now banking up resources as he's non-stop pop cap. Zerton struggling with population, declining actually. And it is just a snowball, you get the feel.
How can you have 3,000 gold and 3 relics? I'm like, I shouldn't be spending this. He's going in for the bombards as well. Like, yeah, he's got the culverins, yeah, he's got the bombards. So what his plan is just cheap bootleg spears and guard, but what about the horsemen? What about the Lang stick? I just feel like SortOf's composition makes so much more sense for taking these fights.
Yeah, it's so much better. Also the mobility aspect. He's got mobility to raid and always force the engagements. And he's going to continue doing so. Raid from the left, raid from the right to distract. Then he can take a favorable engagement in the middle.
Hold up, Zerton speaking my language now. The walls are going up and all the outposts. So this makes a little bit more sense, right? Why waste PopCap building ranged units to the HRE when you can just build outposts and they don't cost PopCap at all, but they can have cannon emplacements.
And cheaper cannon emplacements they are. Those are very tanky outposts if you get the unique upgrades with the HRE. With cheap weapon emplacements, as you said, that is the recovery path possibly for Zerton. He needs to stop this desperate bleed that he has. He keeps being raided, he keeps being wounded from multiple directions. He needs to stop that. That's the first step towards his recovery in this one.
Just wall. You know, just... Oh, that's right. You can't wall because SortOf placed walls in the way of your walls. That's right. Palisades are up. No complete enclosure available to Zerton. Oh, I love SortOf.
Yeah, he's just playing trench warfare over here, slowly digging the trenches, crawling closer and closer, and forcing engagements into narrow quarters. Now, with 9 Landsknecht in his army, could easily wipe out the spearmen that Zerton has over here. Only spearmen that Zerton has, actually.
Yeah, it's just siege and spears, right? Zerton is dreaming of that other mirror game again, right? Like, where this would make more sense, which is as a Mongol player. But you're an HRE player. You need something with a little bit more vavavoom to it. Sure, your spearmen move quick, but all they're going to do is quickly run into these Langstack. Really surprised that he still hasn't gone back for them himself, considering he has better passive gold generation than SortOf.
Speaking of SortOf, I'm actually puzzled why he's still not pivoting into something that deals with the spearmen. Could easily be hand cannoneers even. He still doesn't have a direct response to it other than his own spears.
I mean, he's got the Langstack, right? Like the Langs...
Only a handful of them, actually. Just 5.
Yeah. He stopped producing them for the moment because he's massing horsemen. So it looks like SortOf is going for that really frustrating playstyle. You know the one where you don't take a fight and you just go to the back of your opponent's base and they follow you? But you have to get there. And to his credit, although it has caught Zerton off multiple times, he's now guarded against it. However, this fight is a weird one to take. Horseman wrapped around the backside. Culverins now being sniped out. He has the spearman quantity, but the issue is he's giving over all these culverins for free.
Reinforcements also trickle in much faster for SortOf. He's got his production buildings closer. Also manages to snipe down 2 of the culverins plus the bombard. Spearmen will trade off evenly against one another, but with the Springald towers of the culverins now appearing for SortOf, he seems to be the victor of this battle, and once again will gain momentum.
Welcome to late game HRE. When no one wants to make the decisive move to win, everyone builds outposts. We thought we were safe after the keep nerfs. We weren't. The keep just got smaller.
No, we weren't.
I mean, it's frustrating, man. These cannons are so ridiculously strong. I mean, for those wondering, like, should I build a keep or should I build several outposts? Always build several outposts.
Yep.
Because you can repair them with wood. That's the important detail here. And they can get cannonballs. A keep can only get 1 of them. So would you like 4 cannonballs or 1?
Chemistry now coming in here for SortOf though, so it seems like he's slowly moving towards more resource or retention when it comes to his units, I guess. Hand Cannoneers could be in the mix, but look at that. Juicy raid. He spots the Lumberjacks. Essentially the exclusive wood line that Zerton has.
Yes, we're playing into dangerous territory at this rate for Zerton. I think actually the chemistry isn't even about the hand cannoneers. It's just about the towers.
Possible, actually.
Yeah, it's just about the cannon emplacements. It's actually pretty crafty because he's only building culverins, right? And it's kind of nice for culverins for trading, but like realistically, it's more about the splash damage of the cannon emplacements, which is pretty vile, actually.
And look at that. I think he's the only person that still has access to stone. Sort of does. Zerton is out of stone, so he cannot really replace weapon emplacements on those towers anymore. Sure enough, he can still buy stone, but the price is going to be astronomical in a few minutes. So sustainability when it comes to dropping more towers with weapon emplacements is in the favor of SortOf as well.
Yeah, the issue around stone is compounded as well because they'll both buy the stone, right? So it's stock market manipulation. It gets even worse for the person that runs out first. So like, for example, if I'm SortOf, I'm like, oh, I've got more reserves. I'll buy all the stone at a good price first in preparation for you running out of stone sooner.
Yeah, exactly. You can just keep buying resources if that is the case. Buy the resources, make your opponent's life even more difficult to do so himself.
And I mean, these raids are starting to cut deep. I feel like Zerton is getting pulled a little. Yeah. You can see he's now starting to pivot backwards, the Spearmen are out of position, and that's what I was waiting for. Like, SortOf, this is why Horsemen are so effective at this stage of the game. Your opponent has to peel back troops to deal with it. He either chases you with Horsemen, which won't kill other Horsemen quickly, or he goes after you with Spearmen, which also won't kill Horsemen quickly because they can't reach them.
Yeah, and that's exactly that. This is a window that SortOf is using to crawl up a little bit, secure some more resources, slay some gold miners in the middle, get rid of those precious towers that Zerton can't really rebuild, while also distracting his opponent with a great raid on the left side.
Yeah, it's just like choose where you die right now for Zerton.
Yep.
And it's all because he's not doing anything productive. Like, I feel like a broken record. I always tell people this, like proactivity over reactivity, right? If your opponent's doing something, do I have to react to it or can I get a better trade? The issue for Zerton right now is he hasn't set himself up to get a better trade. He hasn't set himself up to defend either. We finally see these wolves coming out, but we see how easily done it is to get around them. And I think this comes down to the fact that like, when you look at that northern wood line, why has Zerton not built a secondary wood wall or stone wall across towards his keep? It's just left it open.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, he's bleeding from so many wounds out here. And this is opening up possibilities for SortOf in the middle. Numbers, not spectacular though for SortOf anymore though. He's down to 50 army as opposed to 71. Could get his siege swarmed by spearmen. He keeps sending in horsemen to those spears, but now he's got a reasonable amount of Landsknechte. And with no towers for Zerton, those can charge in.
14 Landsknecht ready to party. Zerton, of course, did transition into the hand cannoneers. They also get the March drill bonuses, but in the meantime, the trade out of siege is favoring SortOf. The wraparound horsemen are in, and look at all the villages exposed. A cleanup for SortOf. The cleave is too strong, and the hand cannoneer count too low. Zerton's gonna have to give over ground.
This is the moment that he has been waiting for, a chance to slay all the spears, a chance to dive in, snipe the precious trebuchets, and then push away Zerton from the only gold mine that he has left, while also pushing up the trebuchets, now threatening that keep as well in the middle. He's slowly gaining ground over here. Very slow, methodical push in the middle, but those raids are setting himself up perfectly to get some ground in the middle and inch by inch crawl towards the base of Zerton.
And the issue for Zerton is he never played the east side, so that's just been free territory for SortOf. They've been contesting ground that Zerton needs for resources. That's why it's going to run out sooner. You can see there's plenty of gold veins in the eastern front, on the southern front, but Zerton doesn't have control of that area. Instead, he built up all these outposts that are being torched down. He has literally zero control there, and because he's not massing horsemen still, because that's only a SortOf trick here, it means he doesn't have the mobility to now transition to that side of the map.
And the thing is that sure thing, you have the passive gold generation, but you need a lot of gold and fast. And when it comes to fast, you need to mine it. And that is an advantage that SortOf has. That's the reason why he can keep pushing those premium units, the Landsknechte. Although, on the other side, more and more hand cannoneers are appearing, and there is no response from SortOf to the hand cannoneer spearman mess right now.
Yeah, so that's what Zerton's trying to do. He's trading spears to get the hand cannoneer mass bigger and bigger each fight. Needs to be careful not to dive too deep though. They can easily be sacrificed if they do go too far, especially with all these cannon emplacements ready to just give some splash damage back the other way.
Exactly, you don't want to dive deep over here. You need to keep those hand cannoneers alive. A lot of spearmen give their lives for this one, but it looks like Zerton might be stabilizing. He's got the walls up, slowly cleaning up the horsemen in his eco, and if he can get to that combination of spearmen and hand cannoneers, that's a different story for SortOf. Landsknechte by themselves won't be sufficient.
Zerton, I mean, this hand cannon count starts to crawl up. You can see he's now mixing mana arms in. Interesting choice here. So many Langsneck coming out from SortOf. And I like this TC on the front side. Just wants to get that E repairs to be more efficient. You have to think these outposts, there's a lot invested in each of them, so they're worth repairing and worth keeping alive.
Exactly. That is your defensive front line. Looks like once again a flank around by the horseman. Still yet to make a wall is Zerton, and once again he's gonna be in the tough spot that he needs to pursue with a very slow unit composition until he stops this bleeding. You get the feel that SortOf is still going to have the advantage in momentum.
I like that Zerton doesn't pull the army there. If he pulls the army north, there's a new push in the center from SortOf. So he's just refusing to give that opportunity. He's refusing to dance monkey the dance. In the meantime, Trebuchet's now starting to mount up onto those outposts. Has to be kind of bootleg about this, because by saving gold, going Trebs instead of bombards, means he's got more gold for these lads on the backside. The hand cannoneers quickly clean in house. Sure, Spearmen are gonna be sacrificed, but the amount of Langsneck going down makes it a damn good trade for Zerton.
As the game goes deeper and deeper, it's going to be the gold efficiency of these fights that matters, and that is massively in the favor of Zerton. Spearman traded for Landsneck, that is a good fight for him right now, because he kept alive the most important component of his army, the hand cannoneers, and as long as those are alive, he can win engagements and he will engagements in the middle.
And it's so underrated, being the HRE with this unit. You get that extra movement speed via the marching drills. It allows you to quickly disengage when the fight starts to look bad. Whereas other civs, it's a lot more stagnant. It's a lot slower to retreat, and that offers up opportunities for your opponent to take units away from you. It's just not there right now for SortOf. I mean, these trades on the backside, yeah, this is a nuisance, and some of us would GG out because we can't be asked to keep microing this, but for Zerton, it's like a shrug of the shoulders. Get people back to humping, a few new workers out into the fields, and you're back to the action on the front side where the hand cannoneer count keeps increasing.
On the other hand, though, once again, off the back of this SortOf gaining some ground here, getting closer and closer to the sacred sites, and this could easily come down to sacred site control soon, because if SortOf can fortify that position, he's gonna force Zerton's hands. Zerton will have to decap a sacred site if SortOf is able to capture that. And once again, these raids continue, once again distracting Zerton, just not letting him focus on the main playing field, really.
But fortification on either side is difficult, Lytical. I mean, there's barely any stone remaining. We already mentioned trading for it, not feeling very good. So SortOf kind of needs to optimize this. He needs to dive even deeper than is apparent at first. And he's starting to do that, the Horseman, once again peeling back spears, but Zerton's just getting better and better reacting, and that is what I want to see. Finally, Zerton's like, wait, walls, more walls. That's why I'm turning this game. He sets up a northern wall. No longer is there a flank point there, and now the hand cannoneers can hold in this choke point where they cannot be overwhelmed.
Exactly, this is the moment that he has been waiting for. He's got the Spearman, look at that, 20 hand cannoneers in the mix as well. A lot of firepower out there. Trades off the culverins from the side of SortOf as well. Right next to the sacred site is a big battle, and the resource efficiency, for the first time in a while, is favoring Zerton. Those hand cannoneers starting to pay for their price. And look at the army numbers, 77 to 40. Zerton might be taking over.
Especially when you consider that SortOf is draining gold right now. The only reason he's kept up so far, the only reason that gold income looks so phenomenal is because he's been picking apart the gold veins. Those will not last forever. If SortOf continues to take poor fights like this will be looking all up for Zerton, and he needs it. I mean, he's been pipped at the post once already. It looked like it was going to be a clear pipping twice around, but now that we've reached this full trench warfare stage, his composition is looking so much better, and SortOf is still not transitioning.
It's the gold retention, right? Every single Landsneck that you send in, it's a glass cannon. Gets killed very easily, a lot of gold going down the drain. On the other side, look at the hand cannoneers. It's so difficult right now for SortOf to kill them. So they return their investment very easily, and the gold retention is just much, much better over here for Zerton with that unit composition.
Yeah, it's like that kind of classic, ha 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 ha, HRE late game, no range units kind of statement, right? Like the Langsneck are not meant to win you battles this late in, right? This is where it starts to get awkward. Hand cannoneers do counter them. The only way hand cannoneers do not counter them is if you are really, 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 really me at micro. That means bad. But Zerton isn't. He's on point. We've seen it so far in this series. So if you ever reach that back line, he's going to split off into 5, 6, 7 different groups, and the cleave damage is not going to be there. And just look how one-sided these fights are becoming. Sure, you still have these outposts standing, but not for long. Zerton always has trebuchets behind this, taking down the defenses as soon as you build them up.
And SortOf is also out of stones, so rebuilding them, at least with weapon emplacements, is no longer a reality. If you lose these outposts, suddenly Zerton can just start flooding into your base. These outposts are essentially what keeps SortOf alive here in the middle of the field, because his army, that is no longer a match to what Zerton puts onto the playing field.
once more into the breach. SortOf sends in another group of horsemen, but once again, the spearmen are there to chase them around. This is the thing. Zerton, he's just looking at this from a sheer numbers standpoint. Like, oh, SortOf has peeled off 18 horsemen. I can peel off 18 spears. Sure, I'm not going to kill them straight away, but it means they can't stop off easily to kill villagers. And in the meantime, we still keep a net equivalent in the main fight. The main fight where we're not equivalent at all because my hand cannoneers beat the crap out of literally anything you are fielding right now.
Exactly, and I mean, horsemen are also being sent in, but those just die as well in a blink of an eye. And those are a lot of precious resources going down the drain for SortOf. Expensive units being picked off by cheapos supported by some premium units at the backline. But SortOf, with no chance to touch those hand cannoneers, now diving deep even, with a chance to snipe the trebuchets.
Oh. Worth it. He sees the cover and he sees everything's going back off, though. He shows respect. Remember, those cannon emplacements can blitz him fast. Now 25 hand cannoneers in the field. And the thing you have to keep in mind is, like, SortOf, he's gone for this cheap unit composition, yet he fields less military force. That's why this works. Zerton is matching the cheap-ass element, but always keeping that premium element behind. Defensively oriented in a way that can never be assaulted. It is why he's been able to claw back so much of this resource deficit through that efficiency.
Exactly, the efficiency also allows him to field less villagers, so he's got more population space for army. All comes down to how effective population-wise and resource-wise those hand cannoneers are. That is the lifeline of Zerton, that is his key to victory, key to winning not just this game, but the entire set.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it in the numbers. Like, if you look at the hand cannoneer count, you look at the pop cap difference, like, it's more or less that, right? That is the difference in terms of villages, is that he's willing to invest that many into hand cannoneers to wipe these fights, and he pushes out enough cannon fodder to hold the front line at bay. You're just seeing it again. SortOf is being absolutely butchered. As soon as people arrive, we've got what I call the Congo line of death right now. If it sounds grim, it's because it is. Every time you run in a new troop, dead, dead, dead. And SortOf is just sucking the life out of himself because over time, wood is going to run out. And you're just throwing infinitesimal amounts of wood down the drain every time you make these horseman spams.
Exactly, and let's keep in mind, Zerton is sitting on one extra relic over his opponent with much more favorable engagements.
I mean, the culverins could just be sniped right now.
Yeah.
Like, you can see they're in range. You can see that Zerton, every time he just gets the edge of those outposts, he's like, no. But those outposts are not going to be there for much longer. Like, the trebuchets are still sieging behind this. Zerton did go down to 1, but I expect him to reinvest. Culverin count is now up to 3 to get rid of the anti-siege. The wraparound coming out from the horsemen is just going to be fairly insignificant. Sure, they snipe 1, but at the end of the day, you're still not addressing these hand cannoneers.
And keep in mind, the gold income in the long run is going to be better for Zerton, so replenishing those culverins, that is going to be much easier for him than it is for SortOf. SortOf is running out of mineable gold. I think he's consuming the last gold vein left on the map. And once that's gone, Zerton is going to have the gold advantage, and with that, the siege advantage.
Yeah, I mean, the treb count is really good for SortOf right now, but I really want people, I need to emphasize this. Zerton does not need the outposts.
Yeah.
They're a bonus, especially when they do things like this, but they're not the detail that matters here. Because even if the outposts go down, the hand cannoneers can still reign supreme. The issue for SortOf is he needs these mangonels to perform, but that's exactly why Zerton has stopped investing in trebs. He wants culverins to keep that at bay, because if these hand cannoneers ever go down, that's SortOf's go time.
Exactly. That is the only chance that he really has. As long as the hand cannoneers stand strong, he can't take a direct engagement. And you see, it will be spotted by Zerton that his opponent is starting to run low on wood. Very inefficient engagements for a while for SortOf, starts to show on his resource bank and starts to show on the resources left for him.
I mean, honestly, these wood walls are starting to look like Takeshi's castle, confusing maze to try and navigate, and it's slowing SortOf down on the rotations. It's been a rotation, spearman right to the backside, freebie on the trebuchets. Sure, the cannon emplacement is pounding into him, but in the meantime, they can snipe a few siege weapons out.
Ooh, the mangonels!
Now moving in, the mangonel shot out! Zerton getting ambitious here, but he sees an opportunity to trade and he wants to take it. We'll back up now. Spearmen do reach in the mangoes. Several siege weapons going down, but Zerton sacrificing half the hand cannoneers in what is definitely not a worthwhile trade.
He wasn't really expecting the mangonels to come in here. They didn't really have a role in the battles before, but those volleys from the mangonels might have saved the game here for SortOf. His opponent down to 13 hand cannoneers, many of which are heavily injured. This is the window that SortOf has been waiting for. As you said, when the hand cannoneers are gone, that's where SortOf has to go, and now's the time to do so.
And Zerton, mistakes made there. Like, no prelates here to heal either. More spearmen coming out. He'll be able to defend against the horsemen, at least in the Langsnecht. But hesitation now starts to set in a little bit. You can see he's doubling down the horsemen. Gold needs to accrue to a point that it's worth the reinvestment. Needs to make each of these last hand cannoneers last until he's ready to birth a new line.
And look at that, he's realizing that the component missing for Zerton are Culverins. He's going to play with the Beastie Cutie unit composition, just Siege and a little bit of infantry. Culverin to push away Zerton's Culverins, and then Mangonels to wipe out all the Spearmen and the Hand Cannoneers. For a long time, this is the first time that SortOf is the one being the aggressor once again, still keeping the dream alive to even this out and push this into game number 5.
However, an issue for SortOf is he's now overburdened in the siege department, and Zerton is looking to strike there. Horsemen being queued up en masse, looking for a surge through, but needs to show some respect because just a few Langsneck can even clean up Horsemen when they panic pile on top of the siege.
And there is also some Spearmen out there for SortOf. So he's got the response to it. It matters. It's actually a matter of positioning. Zerton wants to raid.
Yeah, this is a free entry point. Like, look what happened right now. Stonewall's up by 1 and SortOf totally forgot about the wall situation over there.
Though. Oh my goodness.
Nah, it's just going to be spin being cleaned up. The hand cannoneers might not be behind this. Need to back away. Langsneck, mainly the last thing on the front side, means that SortOf might be hesitant. But the crawling continues. I need SortOf to be a bit careful about this, though. The horsemen are no longer here. He could get cleaned up if he's not paying attention. And,
yeah, he's going greedy.
What? Yeah, a little bit too deep.
He wanted to get greedy there. Oh, man. You get the feel that Zerton wanted to raid on the left side, but he pulled away his forces essentially from the middle, and the moment he did that, SortOf started pushing. So, yeah, there is an opening on the left side, but you can't use it because you need every single unit you have here in the middle.
Mangonel shots out, heavy damage done, but remember, each one of these Magos going down stings hard for SortOf, lacking in the reproduction via gold. You can see how much of a slog has become there. Yes, this is an HRE mirror. Yes, the one resource they do not have is indeed gold. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to hyper late game HRE.
Well, you're saying that, but trade is being set up by SortOf. He's preparing for a very long game. In a game...
Oh, no.
Wait a second. Who is getting biology? Okay, it's Zerton.
Coming out for Zerton.
I got scared for a moment.
Yeah, I think this trade got spotted. Like, Zerton right now has to realize there's a marketplace in the corner. There's no way he built that originally. Like, he only just clipped the tree line. So it should make sense what's coming. And this is going to leave SortOf weaker in the coming minutes. Because although trade is the long-term goal, the investment sets you back, especially when you have such limited gold already.
Well, with the raid stopping on the left side, you reclaim a small gold pile for yourself. And keep in mind, you still have good passive gold, especially because now you control both of the sacred sites. Suddenly, Zerton is the one who has to make a move, because in 10 minutes' time, he will be out of this game if he doesn't manage to decap one of those sacred sites.
It's tough to see if SortOf will be able to hold that long term, though, especially with this investment into trade, especially with the horseman spams coming out. Here's a funny thought for you. You're in a game with 2 HRE players. Gold is so limited that Tyve Barnes is only now being researched.
Oh, man.
Welcome
to
late game HRE.
Oh, man. Bleeding continues for Zerton here. Big cavalry push by SortOf. He hasn't really been raiding for quite a while, now finds an angle, and could be rewarded quite easily here because those lumberjacks, they are lying wide open out there.
You know what? Actually, having your eco snipe is quite the reward for SortOf, because look at his eco count now. His military is bigger. Is there a correlation between military being bigger and him pushing? Why, yes. Yes, there is. He's finally matching the numbers. And remember that Zerton no longer has that premium chunk of hand cannoneers. It's down to 17. It's slow to reproduce because he has to get the siege sorted first. He needs to go mass horsemen and mass culverins if he wants to clean up SortOf or have any chance of doing so.
Exactly, and as you said, you're replacing the villagers with trades, so in the long run you are set up much, much better. And what's more important is that you still control the sacred site, crawling up more and more, and possibly a chance to take down the keep to the south of Zerton's base, which would open up more raiding possibilities, which is essentially the key for SortOf to win this game. He has been living and dying with those raids for quite a while. If he can continue to trickle in units into the eco of Zerton, this is gonna get more and more difficult for a blue player.
And you know, like, you're in desperation central when an HRE player goes trade anyway, by the way. Like, I can't think of a single civ worse at doing trade than the HRE. Because you get efficiency, right? The Holy Inspiration is that good, then you compare it to the numbers you get out of trade. It's not a good exchange, but speaking of good exchanges, this is looking good for SortOf. There's no wraparound coming in. The horsemen are pinched, they're pinned down. Limited numbers coming out, and that's problematic because it means there's no threat to the Mangonels. Mangonels that are absolutely obliterating the front line Zerton's putting together.
Exactly, all the hand cannoneers getting wiped out by the Mangonels. Zerton still has the resource bank to replenish those units, but it's the premium units that are now lacking. Only a handful of hand cannoneers left in that battle, and the Mangonels still standing strong out here. Once again, an attempt to try and snipe the Mangonels will fail because the reinforcements come in much, much faster here for SortOf, and his front line is standing strong, protecting the Mangonels as long as possible.
You can see this rush where like Zerton is definitely getting desperate at this stage. Hand cannoneers cut off a force on the right side to try and clean them up. But the second wave coming in from SortOf, there's Mangonels now changing target. I mean, this is the difference. Mangonels are MVP here. The hand cannoneers look crisp, but the Mangonels are crushing them like my fist on some crisps. Or potato chips for Americans.
Mangonels, though, still standing strong, definitely stronger than potato chips are. And look at the army of Zerton, vibed out from the battlefield, down to 57 units, still yet to decap that sacred site, with the counter going down to 7 minutes now. Desperation slowly kicking in here for Zerton as he's falling behind more and more compared to his opponent.
He's stuck in a rut now. This is bad news. Like, he can't get away from it. The problem is he can't play for Southern Sacred Site either. SortOf built a proxy base there. That's where part of these horsemen are coming from. So if you make a pivot there, instant reaction comes out quicker for SortOf. You have to win or lose here, and I think he knows it. He's doubling down. Plenty of spearmen coming out, but little else, and you can see his eco is already stretched, despite the fact that Zerton is producing almost 4,000 food a minute. He's barely staying above zero.
Oh man, the reinforcements are just coming in so fast for SortOf, and part of the reason why he always has the upper hand is because of that. And you see the distance to travel. Look at the white dots on the minimap. So big distance to travel as compared to just production building spent everywhere for SortOf.
That's what I mean. Like, he's got the proxy base. You can see those white dots you talked about. Also, keep in mind the walls went up, so Zerton couldn't even go back for gold if he wanted to. These walls blocked him out. Like, SortOf has played the map wide. That's the thing I want to give credit to in this game, is he has earned a Game 5 based on the ability to play wide, something that Zerton was not prepared for. And now with his delayed arrival in a condensed assault, look how strong he now is. The micro is on point. Zerton is quickly crumbling. It's barely anything but Spearman remaining. And I think he might be closest waving the white flag because Spearman is not going to get you home.
Yeah, that's exactly it, especially if you look at the gold income of SortOf now, up to 2,000 per minute, trade finally kicking in, so he can once again start adding Landsknechte, and there are no hand cannoneers left from Zerton's side to deal with those. Horsemen once again pinching on the left side, just being annoying as always against Zerton's eco, and now Zerton keeps losing battle after battle, and possibly the war altogether.
My concern is this game, it drags on so long. You have your opportunity of redemption, it goes the wrong way. You know, does this kind of cripple you mentally? Are you able to recover from this? Because this was brutal. There are a few shining moments of hope for Zerton, but overall, when you look back at this one, you can't help but feel that SortOf shouldn't have been in the running, but the moment he got back into contention in this one, it has been looking thumbs up for the Red HRE the whole way.
Exactly. Now it's cruise control turned on here for SortOf. He keeps winning battle after battle, reinforcing the middle as well. And keep in mind, holding is insufficient for Zerton. The countdown is down to 5 minutes. And look at the bottom left. Cannon emplacements once again coming in for SortOf. He's got the gold to turn into stone, and he's going to reinforce that defensive position. Zerton needs to get one of those sacred sites for himself, or it's going to be game over in 4.5 minutes.
Now that might sound like some sexy alchemy, but no, it's just he's got that much gold he can exchange for those pricey stone investments. And with this gained ground, the outpost going up, this is where the butchery really begins. Zerton has not had an opportunity to go into siege. He's now over 50 spearmen in the field. It seems like a good idea, but with the Mangonel shots coming out, the Langsneck push continuing, and the bombard emplacements coming in those outposts soon, you can't help but feel Zerton is never going to get to decap this sacred site.
Exactly, and look at his food bank. It's gone. He was sitting on 5,000 food just moments ago. It's because he's taking so ineffective engagements, sending in waves after waves of spearmen into Landsknechte, cannon emplacements, Mangonels, and he decides to call this one. We're going into game number 5, ladies and gents.
Zerton burns himself up. Burns himself out, approaching that hour mark. How will he reset? How will he recover? Because he's going to have to. 2 games in a row going against him. And SortOf, the confidence has to be soaring higher than that villager count. A villager count that for a long time looked like it might cost him the game, but when he identified he was floating too much eco, when he transitioned that, you start to see these fights get incredibly one-sided. Zerton not able to hold with the premium units anymore and slowly losing this game, but my god, this is the type of game that grinds you to your It's time to decide who's going to go on through, Zerton or SortOf. To do so, we take to Holy Island.
Spawning in on the right side is Zerton playing as the English in red, and on the left it is going to be SortOf in the command of the French. A little confusing compared to the previous game where SortOf was playing the red color and Zerton was playing blue. Well, hopefully that's something that we're gonna have changeable in the future if we have better spectating tools. Will definitely be one of the things on my priority list.
Dude, I love the things like we like to complain about. Over the years, over the months, it's been like, yes, the animation canceling's busted. But alongside things like animation canceling, we've always had the time-old classic of why are the French red? I love this community.
Oh yes, indeed. Well, truth be told, it's the English red right now, so we're all good.
Yes.
Looks like we're gonna have a move out from Zerton for the fish. Other side, I see a villager moving through as well, or at least we have a small blue dot moving out, so double docks, one for each player out there. But there's a massive difference between the two. Zerton only going for one scout this time around, SortOf going for the second, and we had a debate on this with Frisian Marshes on whether you go for 2 scouts or 1. This is a similar map with the amount of sheep and the predictability. So the concepts that we discussed on Frisian Marshes apply here as well. This time around, though, Zerton, he wants to nail a faster feudal age timing, partly because he's now up against the French, who really want to get a good feudal age timing themselves.
It's more than that, actually. Like, SortOf is playing French against the English, and although the Hulks are in theory stronger, they have less armor than the Castle Age brothers, and they suffer against the galleys, not just because like mass galleys can kill you, it's also because you're so slow. We've seen this type of matchup before. We've seen it with players like Marine Lord, right? And how easy it is for you to kite. And I think what's happening here is like SortOf wants to have more sheep as backup on land, because it's very likely that a galley could sneak in while the Hulk's away from home and eat all the little babies, right? Eat all the fishing boats that are going to be unguarded.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right? Like the Hawks, they will dominate waters when they're not being overwhelmed by galleys. On the other hand, they are slow moving. And part of the ways that you can win water on this map is just diving with a couple of galleys, outmaneuver the Hawks, and snipe the fish. You will lose your galleys possibly, but your opponent will lose the fish. So that could also be part of the equation. And of course the fact as well that you don't want the English player to just fully focus on land. You want him to have some of his food from the water, because if you let him have a bunch of sheep, plus you also have the English farming eco, that doesn't really line up that well for the French.
And I think, like, for the French, you don't want this to just turn into a feudal slog where you both build crap tons of naval. Because let's say, for example, the Hulk count is 8, and then the fair comparison. Let's say the galley count is 13. At that stage,
8 Hulks, man. What are you talking about?
Because Hulk smash. But let's say that does happen, right? Let's say they just let's do a tested fury here, right? Let's test KP's fury. Now, the reason I give it over to the English, some people are going to think it's something like, oh, the attack speed buff, right? KP's going to say, like, they got an outpost nearby. Nah, it's actually the blacksmiths. Because, like, this is the issue that you have, is, like, as you snowball and the armies get bigger, like, that increase in damage on galleys matters a lot more, and you have no answer with the Hulks. Like, what am I going to do as a French player? Drop a blacksmiths and get ranged upgrade for 1 damage on my Hulks? Ooh, whoa, don't push the boat out. Meanwhile, on the galleys, I get that upgrade. That's an extra 6 damage per galley, and I'm building probably double the amount of galleys to Hulks. So, like, it's a compounded issue.
Yeah. Do keep in mind that the French Hulks have lower ranged armor than other Hulks. So that's the trade-off that they get while they're getting that in Feudal Age. So the galleys, they actually perform a lot better against French Hulks than they do against the Hulks or the counterparts of other civilizations. So war junks, even Buglaws.
It's kind of funny as well, because I think there's this perspective that the Hulk should be better now, ever since the naval change, where you can't attack and move with ships. I just don't think that's true. I just think galleys are so good now because of that change. So, like, galleys used to kind of get discounted by drive-by ships, ones that could dance circles around them, and they couldn't turn quick enough. But now, like, it's just galleys are king. Galleys just win. Like, they're pretty cost efficient, even more so the English, right? Because you get that 10% discount. And then eventually you'll get into the attack range increase. It's just very difficult, especially for the French, to trade out against that.
Exactly. Part of the reason why SortOf is so resilient when it comes to trying to torch down the dock from Zerton is because, as you said, you get the feel that despite the Hulks available to the French, it's not like a clear-cut victory for them on the water. It's a lot more delicate balance that comes down to paying attention to making sure that the galleys can't sneak past and making sure you don't get outnumbered heavily by the galleys against your slow-moving Hulks.
Yeah, you basically need a naval blockade, right? Like, that's why I said, like, 8 Hulks. 8 Hulks is where I'm like, there's enough here that he can't just sail by.
Yep. It's like a continental blockade just 300 years before it was cool.
Yeah, just like, and you make it look cool in game. You ever been that type of RTS player where you're like, I'm gonna make my base look cool. I'm gonna make my formation look cool.
I feel like you're watching the wrong streams if you're looking for players that want to make their base look cool. I think priorities lie at different places for the games that we're spectating nowadays.
Seems like now is a great time to announce EGT's Make a Pretty Base tournament. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, right now, people are like, Pog, Pog, Pog. Is that a real thing? No. Although...
One thing we could announce, though, is that all the sets that we're casting here at EGCTV live on Twitch, they will also go up to YouTube. So in case you don't know where to check for previous sets, if you missed something, that's the place to look for. And if you drop a subscription and ring the bell, you're also going to get notified of every single game that pops out on YouTube as well. But of course, the best way to watch is live here on Twitch.
Yes, I especially prefer when people watch live on Twitch, because when they go watch on YouTube, they have the ability to quickly replay and check something I said and then flame me in the comments.
I mean, if that is your concern, I'm sure there's a lot of people on the chat live on Twitch right now that are willing to flame you as well, so you just have to ask for it.
That's true. Twitch chat does have 10k elo. They make Beastie look like a noob. He's already admitted that before in chat. You're all too smart.
All right.
But look at this game. Let's look at who's going to be big brain, because SortOf, we've seen this before, the horsemen instead of knights, because you can't afford hulks and knights. But I like the idea that he's adding in horsemen, because if you think about the way that the spawns work, the wood line ends up far enough away from the TC, and the gold lines usually spawn just out of range. There is a way that you can delay your opponent from gathering on those two key resources.
Exactly. Not a lot of land commitments, actually, for both players. You see, both of them are just poking around SortOf. You could maybe justify one knight for SortOf just by delaying the Hawk production, because that one knight could be immensely valuable harassing Zerton, given how little Zerton has back at home to defend with.
Yeah, actually, like, when you look at the count, I mean, realistically, the galleys are going to take the lead. The Hulks are keeping, like, neck and neck right now, but over time, that's going to compound. I don't think it's too big of a deal to sacrifice 20 seconds of Hulk production to afford the extra knight. So I agree. Like, that's a cool idea as well, because then you've got 4 or 5 horsemen and 1 knight. So the horsemen are just a defense force, right? They tank the fire of the TC, so the knight remains optimal.
Yeah, speaking of remaining optimal, there's a forward dock coming in here for SortOf, and I love this. You lack mobility. You can't really pull back your Hawks to repair all the way back home. But with a forward dock, it's a different story, and it pushes the fight close to Zerton's side. Could easily mean that SortOf could win this fight here.
You can see the flurries of arrows coming out, how quickly that damage adds up due to the lack of ranged armor you have on these Hawks. You know, it's just this the efficiency. It's even better for the English, right? Like I think the HRE is still MVP for galleys, but oh, Zerton, no. That was a bit greedy. A new galley is at least going to come out, but realistically, you should not be losing that first ship like that.
Exactly, especially because the second Hawk is already coming in here, so you're once again going to get outnumbered, and we talked about this, galleys can take good fights against Hawks, but not in the case of even numbers, and the concerning thing here for Zerton is that if he loses control over the water just for a brief moment, he's going to get his dock taken down by the Hawks. That dock already down at like 40% HP.
Yeah, and this is a game where both of them are wholly reliant on that for their food income, right? They're looking towards that food source. And you can argue the English, if they get pushed off, they can transition farms. You're still doing so from behind, and you're not getting a one-up to do so. Like, these deep water fish, their gathering rates are going to exceed what farms offer you, even as the English.
And the investment is also much smaller. Remember, the English also getting a discount on their ships. Fishing ship now being pulled for repairs. Dock set on fire, but now it's 4 galleys versus 2 Hawks.
Yeah, back up fast. This is gonna
he might lose one of those Hawks.
Flurry of arrows, nice block out there. Nice maneuver by SortOf, but he's getting greedy, bringing the other Hawk back in. In fact, if I'm Zerton, I just peel one off and chase it. But it looks like right now the trades are still on point. Good optimization, SortOf. Heavy damage on 2 Hulks. But notice he goes back in because the ballista shots do so much damage. 50% of the damage goes through against that dock.
Exactly. He's still playing greedy over here. Could easily end up being punished for it with the Hawk being so weak. But the micro is stellar. Pulling away the weak Hawks. Absolutely stellar micro here for SortOf, really.
Remember what we said at the start of the series, right? I said SortOf his micro looked a little bit off, but this is day and night difference. Like, the longer this series goes on, man, I bet right now I wouldn't be surprised if Hut's kind of sweating a little. It's like, SortOf is looking better and better as this goes on. I'm getting a little bit worried. Glad these aren't at least best of 7, so I don't know what it looked like then, but this is a beastly lad. Compared to how he began this series and how he looks now, Zerton is struggling.
And look at that. The timing on this is perfect. It's such a delicate micro out here, pulling back it or pulling back the Hulk just when it's too weak to fight, but just enough to dish out as much punishment as possible. Oh, look at that. Not a single Hulk lost so far.
Zerton's partying on land, but SortOf is now reacting with archers of his own. You know, that's a heavy burden, right? The Hulk investment. But so far, the galley investment coming the other side. Zerton now going in for the sails. This is going to be an important detail. His issue so far is he's got all these heavily injured Hulks in front of him, but he just can't reach them quick enough. Sails will allow for that, and it means that we might start to see really good trades coming out for the English.
Exactly. Galley numbers slowly increasing here. Their condition is also pretty good, constantly being repaired over here. One being sunk, but finally could dive in to try and snipe those weak Hawks. He just needs one good engagement. So many of those Hawks being so weak.
They are. I mean, sort of. It might be worth pulling a few fishing boats just to heal them up a little bit quicker, but he can't afford the idle eco, not with the fact that he needs to push horsemen and archers on land to answer what Zerton's been doing. Zerton, who has now gone up in the longbow count, and will continue to try and dive round onto the backside of this wood line.
Yeah, that is definitely a good distraction. Sort of also had to reposition his gold miners because of that. And yeah, the horseman feels kind of suicidal, you get the feel.
Nah, he's like, brah, I need to prove that the horsemen are better than knights. Watch this. I'm going to take on the TC all by my lonesome. It looks like he did pull them back in time, but a very weird click coming out from SortOf there. I think he was trying to click the Hulks and accidentally caught the horseman.
Yeah, possible. Now, as you said, Sails clicking in for those galleys. Look at that. SortOf is no longer able to take good engagements. He's trying to heal as much as possible, but Zerton being the defender, he always has the numerical advantage. And he's also slowly banking up food. He's still lacking gold, so Castle Age is just a distant dream. But you get the feel that Zerton's transition here could come sooner than his opponents.
SortOf needs to be careful. This dock is going to tank a lot of fire when he tries to cycle, and you can see the issue now. The galley count is going up. The only good news for SortOf is Zerton still hasn't gone for the blacksmiths yet. He will start to snipe out these fishing boats, quickly get rid of them, and you can see the micro is still on point in the meantime for SortOf, but it feels like this is the stage where Zerton should be able to surge forward, yet losing 2 galleys so freely means he has to back away. SortOf will once again hold, and now Zerton is going to be put on the defensive on land as well.
Once again, fishing ships are being pulled here for SortOf. He's thinking about diving deep once again. 6 galleys. Slow him down here. First Hawk finally falls here to Zerton's forces, and this might have been the icebreaker for him to wait for.
I mean, you say that, like, the issue is, look at the damage now on the dock. This is why Zerton fought him there. SortOf needs the dock gone. The dock is drawing a lot of fire, and it doesn't die quickly. Remember, you only do 50 damage per shot, and it's a 1500 HP structure.
Yep. First dock is going to go down just before another galley pops out of there. Hawks getting pushed back for the time being, but yeah, that's a good point. Now he's gained some ground on the water, and he also has some forces on land to push with. Horsemen against only longbows.
Where are the spears right now? He stopped producing spears. Mistakes have been made here. SortOf now gaining momentum on both land and sea. Zerton beginning to feel the pressure. And the galley production now going down to just one dock is going to put you behind. This is where, if SortOf doubles down on Hulks, he'll take full control of the water.
And he has to double down on Hawks. He was able to force his opponent away from the goal thanks to those horsemen. This might have been the moment he's waiting for, because finally those galleys are so weak. He's about to hit the fishing eco for the first time in this game.
This is starting to sting. Zerton not looking healthy on any of those galleys. And SortOf still healthy on 2 of them is the problem. New galley comes out, but as soon as you try to push out, just look at the heavy damage being taxed upon you. SortOf, the micro just so on point. Land, at least Zerton has gained some breathing room. But sea is about to go one way, and it is going to be the way of the blue, as it rightly should be.
Reaching the critical mass of Hawks, he can essentially one-shot galleys now, and it's starting to show on the battlefield. You can no longer dive in with the galleys to snipe the injured Hawks because you just get evaporated in a matter of seconds. Second dock attempted, but cancelled. Zerton might know that there is blood in the water, in literal terms, really, because all his sailors are about to sink to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, they never learned how to swim. They're like, well, we'll just win. We'll never need to swim. Oh, we're losing. We're losing bad here. SortOf now committing. He's actually got 3 more Hulks behind this. They'll be back soon. They're just taking a little bit of an R&R, repair crew time. Hulk will at least be chased down and finished off, but the price is going to be 2 more galleys. Zerton, gosh golly, he's looking done here. He's trying to rebuild the galleys, but he's going to have to rely on land now. There's no way he can hold the sea any longer.
He's trying to flank around on land with longbows, trying to disrupt the eco of SortOf, just somehow buy himself time to get back on water. But water is gone for him, and this is something that SortOf knows. This is the moment where SortOf is going to switch to land himself, knowing fully well that all he needs to do is hold off his opponent on land, possessing a 10 eco lead right now, in control of the water. He just needs to hold off Zerton on land, that he might have the series in a reverse sweep.
And it's mainly Lombos. There's barely any spears in this. Some knights are now coming out. Love this out of SortOf. The beast is unleashed. He no longer needs to invest in hulks, which means his gold can be used elsewhere. And by the way, he's got a bloody lot of it. Look at it. SortOf was so distracted by these naval combat situations, he didn't rebalance his eco. He's got over 1,000 gold surplus.
Yeah, indeed, he could easily turn this into Knight if he had the food for it, but even just blacksmith upgrades, or even the fishing upgrade, essentially any upgrade that he can spend gold on is valuable for him right now. He has complete control over the water, and Zerton's only chance seemed to be a push here directly into his base with longbows and spears, but this is something that SortOf is prepped for. He's probably going to send the horsemen around to raid, actually, or intercept reinforcements even better.
And here's an issue right now, actually, for Zerton. He's got a lot of gold himself. But the difference between him and France is France has an easy way of investing it on land. You do not get access to heavy cavalry as the English at this stage. The only thing you can build is man-at-arms, and there's no way in hell you want to start building boy-at-arms up against this. Not with the tax on your food, which you can't pay because you just lost your fishing eco.
And now you're getting picked apart here by higher mobility, reinforcements getting intercepted. Nice way for SortOf to distract his opponent. He doesn't want a direct fight. He just wants to pick off the reinforcements one by one, buy him time to really leverage that extra eco that he has.
Yeah, and you can see the escalation coming out. The amount of archers now being built, chivalry being researched. He got the iron undermesh as well, so Zerton's Lombo's doing less damage. And Zerton, he really is on the clock. If he can't close this out in 2-3 minutes, that's where this snowball begins to really come into the picture, because SortOf still has that fishing eco that Zerton has lost.
Indeed, it's a 15 eco lead and right now in his favor. And look at the army numbers, 42 against 30. Some of those are obviously Hawks, it's a little biased. But if you look at the compositions, 6 knights, 4 horsemen rather, and 7 archers as well. SortOf will be able to defend with the archers and then flank around with the cavalry. We talked about this one with the French before. You just want something that defends your base while you flank around with the knights, and that is coming together so effectively for SortOf here.
And Zerton made a whoopsie-daisy here. He's actually separated with his lombos and spears. Luckily for him, SortOf was not willing to take the engagement, wasn't in position, but mistakes like that can cost you dearly. If SortOf notices that again, he'll pinch it. He's got enough knights to do so.
Looks like it's going to be a push to the north. The gold miners of SortOf are there, so he has to be careful. A lot of exposed eco, and this is something Zerton is aware about. Could easily punish this one, as SortOf's army is mispositioned. He doesn't see this army or didn't see it in time. Could be punished for it dearly.
Wow, Zerton's going towards the base instead, though. That's giving more time over. That's tipping off SortOf, and now SortOf, he'll have time to react. He could also peel a few knights and head towards Zerton's base. Because if the whole army is here, nobody is defending at home. Speaking of not being defended, these villages have been left to their own fate. And it will be a grim one. They'll try to sneak out on the north side, but the scout vision is just too good from Zerton. The torch down continues, and that is stunting the production rates in these cavalry departments for SortOf. Maybe a good thing for him here, considering he has now been pushed off the gold. Cannot afford more knights right now.
Yeah, but he's looking to take a decisive engagement here, and he might have the critical mass to do so. Nice dance with the knights over here. Spearmen finally engaging.
He clashes. He's willing to commit here. There's not enough spearmen. Zerton missing a few. They're back at home defending. And now the Lombos are left alone, sacrificed to the French. There is no getting out of this. More reinforcements are trickling in, but by the time they arrive, half of your Lombos are already going to be dead, and the snowball will begin and continue, in fact, from there.
Reinforcements once again being picked off, being so valuable for SortOf, cutting off the spearman reinforcements just in time to slay most of those longbows.
It's so many knights, Lidical. He doesn't care about the spears. Even the attack speed buffer coming over, he shrugs his shoulders and says, why would I give a damn about this? You're losing. I can see it. I can feel it. And you know my economy is stronger. SortOf will just A-click his way to a victory in these fights.
We have been talking so much about the hesitation to commit from one side, and that SortOf has been playing with so much confidence. And that is going to show. SortOf completes the reverse sweep, knocks Zerton out from the August monthly, possibly an upset, but definitely a stellar series to look at. What a set, KP. Unbelievable.
Absolutely amazing turnaround. SortOf looking rusty at the start of this series, but the only thing rusting is Zerton at the bottom of that lake in Holy Island. What a play to come out from this. What a play to reverse sweep this. Zerton, you look at game 1, game 2, damn, this looks like an easy 3-0. It looks like it's going to go the way of practically any other series, but SortOf, the way he clutches this up and the way he builds momentum, the way he's not actually hesitant the same way we saw Zerton be in game 3 and 4 is why he was able to close out here. It's a critical ingredient to success, is identifying the time to go and the time to say no. And that's what he done phenomenally well. SortOf takes it 3-2, will head through to the round of 8 to face